want to use that much of me. Let's see. Welcome back to the channel. If you guys are new here, you must be lost, honestly. If you're new here. If you're here at all, you must be lost. Some projects to work on, so I'm going to be working on a couple of these faces, finishing up the paint, scraping off the paint, and just trying to get them finished for their top coats. That's pretty much it. I'm going to be listening to something. Probably film theory or game theory or whatever theory's on. Yeah.
House is Canada's #1 German.
But yeah, you're welcome to stop by every once in a while, see what's happening, or just pop in to see how far I
Now
am.
the new 2025
This
House
one's done.
is even better.
Hello, Internet. Thank you for stopping by.
Yeah,
Today
this one's
is
done?
no ordinary day, and this is no ordinary video. Because today, we're going to
I got
help
this
save
one
the
done.
planet. Sorry, was that intro too creepy? I planned these scripts way in advance, and so my brain was still in Halloween mode when I wrote it. Anyway, 2 years ago, my good friends Mr. Beast and Mark Rober, you might have heard of them, they're kind of popular on the internet, had massive success with a charitable movement called Teen Trees, raising $20 million to plant 20 million trees, and now they're at it again. This time their goal is to raise $30 million to remove 30 million pounds of plastic and trash from the ocean. According to National Geographic, there are 548 million pounds of trash in the ocean, including a 1.6 million square kilometer trash island just sitting out right in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. I think it goes without saying, that's kind of a problem. And the thing is, that problem isn't going away or getting any better. Plastics take a long time to degrade, 450 years, in fact, which means that it's going to continue existing in the oceans for centuries after being washed into the water. This affects marine life, which can get caught up in the plastics, which leads to stuff like starvation and drowning, but it also affects us humans too. If fish are ingesting plastic, the toxins are broken down and enter the body. The body we then consume when we fancy a bite of sushi. It's not a great situation for anyone, most of all for planet Earth. And so Jimmy and Mark are trying to do something about it, and they aren't doing it alone. There are hundreds of YouTubers over the next couple weeks all posting videos to help raise awareness for the cause. Because if this is gonna work, we need your help. $30 million is not a small amount of money, unless of course you're Luigi and you inherited a haunted mansion. But we are not Luigi, and so we need your help, loyal theorists. Go to the donation link in the description below and give whatever you can. 100% of your donation is going directly to Ocean Conservancy and the Ocean Cleanup, non-profit organizations that have partnered with us to help achieve this goal. One with the goal of picking up existing trash in the ocean, and the second with the goal of stopping the problem from getting worse, using machines as a preventative measure to help catch the trash in rivers before it escapes out into the ocean, preventing the problem from getting worse. In short, every dollar translates to one less pound of plastic in the ocean. After 10 years on YouTube ruining your collective childhoods, it's time for me to take the opportunity to redeem the childhoods for the generations to come. So please follow the link down in the description below and donate if you can today. If we don't help solve this now, who knows what's going to happen in the future. Oh wait, we do know, because Subnautica reveals a heck of a lot about this exact thing, even though the story kind of skims over it. Boom-chin, get it? Skimming the trash.
Hey guys.
And with that seamless segue, let's get to the episode.
Welcome to the most boring live stream.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory, the show that's willing to dive deeper and deeper and deeper to clean out the tiniest ounces of lore. Believe me, there was a lot of diving and searching involved. This game is mostly water after all. Regardless, I found something. A bone, in fact. A bone that I have to pick with Subnautica's developers, Unknown Worlds Entertainment.
Dear Unknown Worlds Entertainment. Hi! It's me! Austin!
Nope, Austin, no. Go home, we've talked about this. You can't keep interrupting my recordings. Sorry about that, where was I? Oh yeah, Unknown Worlds Entertainment. As amazing as your ocean-planeted Subnautica is, did you really expect everything to be fine when a massive spacecraft crashes in from orbit? For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, back in 2014, the world was stunned by an early access game called Subnautica, an open-world survival action-adventure game. I wish I was just making that genre up, but it is literally pulled from their Wikipedia page. It's like they used a random word generator for their game description. Regardless, what was impressive about this game was that it took place primarily in the ocean invasion of a far-off alien planet. Now, a game built as one big water level is going to be a tall order. I've played through enough Sonic and water temples in my day to know that water plus video games equals big suckage. But Subnautica is anything but that.
Got the dog tonight, so if I leave, I'm probably gonna put her up to pee.
The spectacular water graphics, the colorful plant life, the wonderfully creative creatures, and they're not trying to eat your face off. The game even has a bit of story. The ship we're on, the Aurora, crash lands on an alien planet with us as the only survivor. We try to piece together what happened, use scraps from the wreckage to survive, and ultimately escape. You know, your usual survival tropes. But of course, it wouldn't really be complete without some kind of human saves the alien storyline. While on the planet, we learn of an incurable and deadly disease, which was being studied by other hyper-advanced alien life forms called Architects well before we got there. This disease actually wiped out Architects, and it's predicted that the same would happen to the whole planet if a cure wasn't found. But in we fly with our crash-landing ship, a non-essential systems maintenance chief from Earth, and of course we figure it all out within a couple days, saving an almost extinct species that were key to the planet's long-term survival. Suck on that, super advanced alien species, we solved your problem in a couple days. Humans! It's a good thing we happened to crash land there, right guys? Or is it? See, there's something that's always bugged me about Subnautica, something that's never really addressed in the game, and that's our impact on the planet's ecosystem. Sure, we stopped a deadly disease, but have we caused more harm than good just by being here? I believe in actuality, we might have doomed this planet even before we set foot out of our life pod. We're talking about the Aurora, the crash, and the devastation left in our wake. Wake, it's the waves that follow your boat. And these puns are not going to get any better as this episode goes.
Huh. We've already got tons of WestJet points.
Yeah?
I'm looking at
This one. That's not bad.
Make it
Yellow's hard to cover, even on a good day.
So it goes on, I can promise you that. Spoiler alert for the episode. Spoiler alert for the channel. They do not get better. We wake up on this alien planet and see that our ship, the Aurora, has already crashed. There's a massive trench where it initially impacted. The water is dusty and sandy, and there's no natural flora in the surrounding area. So far, this all seems pretty accurate on the surface. We know from shipwrecks that when boats collide with the ocean floor, especially near coral reefs, that we see damage and destruction to those environments. But when you look closer, the math doesn't quite add up. Here's the map that we're given in the game. That sandy section on the bottom right of the map is known as the crash site biome. Here is the placement of the Aurora in that biome. Notice anything strange? To me, it's odd that the biomes to the left of it don't seem to have been impacted by the crash at all. Back in the year 2000, there was a container ship called the Bunga Teratai Satu, which unfortunately crashed into the Great Barrier Reef, immediately destroying a 1,500 square meter area. That's about 5,000 square feet, but that wasn't all. It also dispersed the toxic paint from the hull up to 250 meters or 820 feet away, thanks to the abrasive impact with the sandy seafloor. The Bunga Teratai Satu is only 184
That's a tongue
meters or
twister.
600 feet in length, but the Aurora spaceship in the game is 1,280 meters.
Scratch all these eyeballs.
100 feet long, nearly 10 times the size. Based on that factor alone, we would estimate that the initial damage would have a radius of 10.5 square kilometers, or 6.5 square miles, which is not the kind of damage that we're seeing on this map. This kind of damage would occur to the Aurora's left, right, and front. That's basically the entire map of the game, totally destroyed by just...
You good? Be right back. I know. Great live streams. Alright, I'm coming. Stop barking and come in. Sorry, the dog doesn't want to come in. Alright, the dog's back in the house. Sorry about that.
The impact alone. That's not all the negative impact that our crashing spaceship would have caused either. With that amount of Earth being dug up and water being shifted, it's likely that it would have caused a tsunami. Tsunamis are a series of large waves caused by a big displacement of water, leading to what appears to be rapidly rising tides rather than traditional waves. Tsunamis are usually caused by things like earthquakes or volcanoes, but sometimes they can be caused by underwater detonations, things that are man-made. And a ship of this size crashing at high speed from space? Yeah, I think that's got a real possibility of having a similar effect. Or, if not that, then definitely the explosion that comes later. A tsunami would obviously be devastating to any civilizations on land, but we don't have any of that in Subnautica, so what do tsunamis do to ocean life? I mean, they're underwater anyway, what's the big deal? Well, the 2004 Boxing Day tsunami in India gives us some insight. Naturally, a tsunami is going to displace a lot of water, but also a lot of sediment as it rips up the seafloor. In India, they learned that this leads to breakages and suffocating of coral reefs and the death of seagrass beds thanks to the sediment blocking both sunlight and oxygen. These coral reefs and seagrass beds are homes to many species, especially in their early stages of life. With these suddenly gone, marine life finds it harder to survive. Plus, the tsunami itself will flush algae and bacteria into neighboring ecosystems. Ecosystems which maybe aren't adapted to deal with this new invasive species. For a really wacky example of it, check out this concrete block. It was transported by a tsunami in 2011 from Japan Japan all the way over to the Oregon coastline. When studying that block, researchers found that the algae and microorganisms had survived the trip, allowing them to establish new communities in Oregon's coastline and disrupt the natural balance that existed there. And all of this is just talking about the initial impact. It gets way worse from here. I mentioned earlier how in order to survive, we have to scavenge around for materials. Around the crash site of the Aurora, we find some very useful supplies. There's lots of scrap metal that's broken off from the ship upon impact, but there's also things like batteries, as well as food and water floating around. And while all that garbage floating around is going to be good for us and our survival, it's not going to be so good for our ocean planet's survival. Batteries and e-waste in general are unfortunately pretty common sights in ocean cleanup. In 2019, 53.6 million tons of e-waste was collected worldwide, and only 17.4% of it was recycled. That leaves 82.6% of it being disposed of by dismantling, incineration, or being dumped in the ocean. As batteries degrade, they release toxic chemicals. This can be because of their use of cadmium, nickel, and lead, all of which leach into the ocean over time and lead to fish absorbing these toxic chemicals as they try to get oxygen out of the water. Now, in the game, batteries don't use lead or nickel. Hooray! But the good news doesn't last because the batteries use copper, yet another heavy metal and likewise toxic if ingested. Swing and a miss there, Unknown Worlds Entertainment. We have a similar issue with the food and water supplies that we find. The food and water itself aren't really a big deal here. It's their containers that are causing the problem. Stuff like water bottles. In 2017, the Ocean Conservancy did an international coastal cleanup. Of the 20,834,689 items that they collected, plastic bottles came in as the third most common source of trash. 1.5 million collected, with plastic bottle caps coming in at number 4, 1.1 million collected. And that's just the bottles. Other plastics like bags, straws, food containers, lids, all of them took up spots 5 through 9 on the 10 most common trash pieces collected. Plastic is the most common thing that you'll find in your ocean trash. Americans alone throw away 35 billion empty water bottles every year. And that's Americans alone, and that's also not including soda bottles, which is crazy. That's just a heck of a lot of plastic. And when it doesn't end up being collected by 700,000 volunteers, it ends up forming what's known as garbage patches. There's actually one of these off the west coast of...
The people have spoken. Taos is Canada's #1 German-engineered SUV. Now the new 2025 Taos is even better.
Coast of the U.S. A plastic bottle discarded from California takes the California Current south toward Mexico. There, it may catch the North Equatorial Current, which crosses the vast Pacific and ends up settling into one of these vast garbage patches, which could mean traveling over 5,000 miles. These plastics prove ridiculously harmful for sea life. Turtles mistake the plastic bags for jellyfish, albatrosses mistake plastic pellets for fish eggs, and we've all seen those pictures of seals getting caught up in abandoned fishing nets. All of these end in starvation, ruptured organs, or drowning for innocent sea life. And it doesn't end there either. Thanks to the ocean currents, it gets broken up into tiny pieces, which start affecting the plankton and algae by blocking out large patches of sunlight, which means they can't photosynthesize. This means a decrease in population, which in turn decreases the population of everything up the food chain, all the way up to sharks and whales. It is like one massive, awful set of dominoes. All of this is to say that having plastic water bottles spread all across the crash zone is going to have some dire consequences for the local flora and fauna, if our planet is anything to go by. Because here's the thing, friends, the Aurora crash has released a ton of garbage into the ocean. The Aurora was sent to build a phase gate on the other side of the galaxy, a construction plan that according to the ship's status log will take 3 years. And according to that same log, there were 157 people on board the ship. With that amount of crew, you're gonna need a lot of supplies. How much? Well, we can figure it out using the International Space Station as a guide. Rehydrated food eaten in space initially comes dehydrated, if that wasn't obvious. And those dehydrated foods need to be contained in order to keep them safe for consumption. Typically, food on the International Space Station weighs in with 0.27 pounds or 0.12 kilograms of packaging weight. We know the Aurora's project time. We know how many people were on board, so let's do some quick calculations. We'll assume a standard 3 meals per day per passenger, so that gives us 127.17 pounds or 57 kilograms per day in packaging waste. Then we have to multiply that by the amount of days in a year, 365, and then multiply that by the 3 years of the mission, giving us a grand total of 139,251 pounds of trash. 63,000 kilograms of packaging just released out into this ocean planet overnight. And that's not even considering anything else, like parts of the ship floating around.
Should I put stars in this?
Containers, things
What
like
do you
that.
think?
Referring back to that 2017 coastal cleanup, food packaging tends to get caught up in ocean
think I should
currents
put-
moving
it kinda
from
looks like a
up to
galaxy.
5,000 miles away.
That's
Which,
kinda what I was
given
going
that
for,
we have
so.
only a few thousand meters, means that we're now affecting areas that go well beyond the scope of our crash site. This has suddenly become a planet-wide issue. Fortunately, the Aurora doesn't seem to have any hydrocarbons like crude oil on board, so that's good. At least we don't
Just
have to
me
deal with a
again.
huge oil spill, but we do have to deal with a huge radiation spill. If you try to swim near the Aurora at the start of the game, you'll find radiation in the area.
Detecting increased nuclear radiation levels.
This will start to deplete your
Don't like
health until
this
you
one,
die and respawn. Later on, we're informed that the Aurora's drive core isn't in good shape.
Warning. Local radiation readings suggest the Aurora's drive core has reached critical state. Quantum detonation will occur within 2 hours.
In other words, big ship about to go big boom, and big boom it certainly does. The game describes it as a quantum explosion, which doesn't really tell us that much. Quantum's just one of those science fiction words that gets added onto things when they can't explain the science behind it. But that is not how we roll here. What sort of explosion are we talking about? Upon impact, we know that there was clearly damage to the drive core, and that led to radiation pouring out into the environment, even before the explosion takes place. This, to me, screams nuclear reactor, and it's not that far-fetched either. NASA actually uses radioisotope thermoelectric generators for long-haul missions to places like Mars. This is because radioactive substances release heat as it breaks down over time. That heat is then converted into electricity, which can power the spacecraft. This would also mean that if there was a breach in the protective casing of the radioisotope, then we would see radiation leaking out into the atmosphere around it, and an explosion would probably cause more damage, creating more breaches for more radiation to leak out, hence the nearly 1,000-meter radius of radiation that appears after the explosion. Why does any of this matter? Well, if the radiation is indeed nuclear in nature, you can bet your bottom dollar it ain't gonna do the planet much good. We know that if you, the player, are in close proximity to the Aurora upon its explosion, you die instantly. So it's likely that any other sea life, be it flora or fauna, would suffer the same fate. The radiation radius then increases massively to 940 meters, which is nearly the size of the Aurora itself. This isn't just affecting the crash site biome, but also the Koosh Zone, mushroom forest, safe shallows, kelp forest, and grassy plateaus. All of these ecosystems are now in grave danger, and not just the current residents, but the next generations are the ones that are going to get hit the hardest, as found in the Japanese seas near the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant explosion. This is because eggs and larvae are still developing, and so the radioactive atoms can start to replace atoms in their bodies, altering their DNA and causing cancers, as well as other weird mutations and physical deformities. And just to be clear, no, I'm not suggesting that you're going to start seeing two-headed fish like the cows in Fallout 4. These physical mutations usually result in deformities like smaller or misshapen limbs, disrupted camouflage, things like cataracts causing eventual blindness, as seen in the mice near Chernobyl. Because of these deformities, the young fish don't tend to survive for very long, their mutations giving them massive disadvantages in the food chain, which in turn can cause radiation poisoning in those bigger fish that decide to eat them. Sure, we do eventually fix the leak in Subnautica, and after 3 days the radiation subsides, but in a sense, that doesn't...
How am I gonna get these teeth
doesn't
clean?
really matter. Fukushima's nuclear accident managed to transport radiation all the way from Japan to Canada's continental shelf in 2.1 years. It continued to remain high until 2016. This shows us that the explosion of the Aurora is going to have potentially global effects for the next 5 years. And if we look at Chernobyl 35 years on, we're still seeing massive repercussions of that explosion. Researchers looking into plants like wheat, rye, oats, and barley that are near Chernobyl
Hi.
are still showing high levels of
How you guys
radioactive
doing
contamination,
tonight?
making them very dangerous for consumption by humans and animals. The radioisotope that tends to be used for radioisotope thermoelectric generators in space is typically plutonium-238, which has a half-life of 87.7 years, meaning that the planet could be dealing with the effects of radiation for centuries after the crash. So while yes, we managed to stop a mystery illness affecting the planet, we also introduced destruction to a delicate ecosystem. Between the trash that we brought, the tsunamis, the radiation, it's likely that we're not a net positive for this planet. We completely wrecked the world of Subnautica, and we're not done because 2 years later, Altera decides to do some more research on the planet, bringing with it more people, more waste, and more damage to the environment. Planet 4546 Beach just cannot catch a break. Enjoy the tranquil world of Subnautica while it lasts, because humans are about to destroy it, like we tend to do. But hey, just because we're doing it to Subnautica's world doesn't mean that our planet has to suffer the same fate. update. Today's episode may have been about a spaceship crashing into an alien planet, but the science we used about marine ecosystems is very real, so what are you waiting for? Go to the top line of the description to click the link to become a part of Team Seas. Help us reach that $30 million goal. I really admire how much thought and care has gone into this two-pronged approach for saving the oceans. Firstly, by removing garbage from the oceans and coastlines 1 pound at a time, and secondly, by stopping garbage from getting to the oceans in the first place. Don't know how trash gets to the ocean? Well, turns out 80% of the ocean trash starts in rivers. So Team Seas is going to be putting trash-eating robots into the world's most polluted rivers to eat up all that garbage before it ever reaches the ocean. How cool is that? Couldn't use those sorts of things on Planet 4546b. So once again, please head down to the description to donate whatever you can to the cause. And tell your friends and family too, they've made it super easy to remember. For every $1 donated, that's 1 pound of trash out of the ocean. Simple as that. Let's all band together to help save the planet, so hopefully when the future does arrive, we've not only saved our own planet, but we're able to save all the others as well. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching.
What's up? Today we're talking snacks. And not my dad's kind. A fan fave, Bear Paws. Mom likes it. They only use real stuff that I like that I don't have to catch it myself.
Bear Paws, made with no artificial colors or flavors.
That one's fine, that one's fine, that one's fine. This one needs something, I just don't know what.
The lore! I have to show you the lore! Hello, Internet! Welcome to Film Theory, the show that knows that going onto YouTube can be like no clipping into the back rooms. You're minding your own business when suddenly it's days later and you have no idea how you've watched so many padlock reviews.
Very, very beefy and very robust lock.
Oh, would you look at the shackle on that baby? Shout out to Lockpicking Lawyer, by the way, for teaching me way more about locks than I thought a human brain could consume. Anyway, today we're returning to the mono yellow walls and ceaseless hum-buzzing fluorescence of the back rooms. In case you need to catch up, the back rooms is an analog horror series here on YouTube.com created by indie filmmaker Kane Pixels. The initial video Kane uploaded in January of 2022 absolutely exploded in popularity, gaining over 43 million views and becoming the 7th most watched video on YouTube of the entire year. All thanks to its unique atmosphere, clever scares, and fantastic production quality. It was also built for theorists like us, filled to the brim with awesome ideas and hidden lore for us to decode. In fact, towards the end of the year, Steph and I even gave Kane Pixels a Streamy Award to honor him for all his incredible work.
This is a box that was delivered to my house.
So, Kane Pixels, here. Did I just no-clip into the back rooms? Kane, I went to the back rooms, and I got you this.
I'm just so honored to be accepting this. So I guess really the only thing I can say right now is thank you.
But now, here we are, 1 year later from that initial upload, now with a story that spans 4 decades of time and 15 videos, plus a few secret videos mixed in. The community has come up with a ton of ideas to explain this thing. Everything from alternative realities colliding to the backrooms being an incarnation of the ancient Egyptian afterlife. Our running theory here is that the world that we see in the backrooms is some sort of simulation, like a giant video game like Matrix. What we know of as the real world is the topmost layer of that simulation. But below the surface, there's an infinite procedurally generated world of unused and cut content. Stuff that either didn't fit or just wasn't good enough to make the cut for the real world. And while I still believe that to be the case, today I wanted to take a step back and reset. The Backrooms is a tricky series to talk about. Nothing is presented in chronological order. Things tend to jump back and forth in time, with some earlier videos referencing events from later videos that haven't technically happened yet. Heck, the very first video that Kane ever uploaded is currently one of the last ones in the timeline. So today, I wanted to do something a little different. I wanted to sit down and make a definitive timeline of exactly what's happened and when, so we can get ourselves a clear overview of everything that's going on in this giant mystery that Kane's crafting. And in doing this, and seeing what fits where, and more importantly, what doesn't fit where, we'll be able to learn a lot more about this story. Spoiler alert, friends, there appears to be a massive time loop we're dealing with, and we might just be witnessing the collapse of an entire universe. Jump into those hazmat suits and hold on to the red guideline, friends. We're going in. The very first event that we see in the series actually comes from the most recent upload as I'm writing this script, Overflow. This video takes place on August 7th, 1972, as we can see thanks to the signature of a man named Ivan Beck. Over the course of this 2-minute video, we also hear a radio broadcast about the Lend-Lease Agreement, which happened between the United States and USSR in, you guessed it, 1972. We watch as an electrical or radio station is overtaken by a green glow that shakes everything violently before suddenly cutting to black. Remember that green light? It's going to be important for us later. The video ends with the night sky now mirror reflected. Something in this universe has fundamentally changed. From there, we fast forward by about a decade to the early 1980s, when a Central California-based company called A-Sync begins researching electromagnetism. On May 10th, 1982, we see one such test of a strange electromagnetic device in the video Prototype. Over the next several years, A-Sync would refine this prototype into Project KB31, otherwise known as the Low Proximity Magnetic Distortion System. On July 2nd, 1988, A-Sync performs a failed third test of the system, but it's their sixth test that really matters. On October 17th, 1989 at 5:04 p.m. Pacific, they power up the system one more time and successfully open a portal to the Backrooms. They have made first contact. However, this move has dire consequences. 5:04 p.m. was the exact time of a real-world magnitude 6.9 earthquake that hit California, killing 63 and injuring thousands more. All of this is confirmed in archival footage found in the secret video Collateral.mov. And that's not the worst of it. From that point forward, the world is just glitched. Small, unseen portals into and out of the backroom start popping up everywhere. People begin no-clipping through reality, never to be seen again. Starting in October of 1989, the number of missing persons reports skyrockets. This is confirmed in the video titled Missing Persons. This obvious video title is obvious. We soon learn that some of these portals are even big enough for entire cars to slip through, like we see in a secret, undated video that must come from around the same period. Meanwhile, back in the lab, A-Sync begins to send in research teams. On February 3rd of 1990, they begin their first mission. Inside the Backrooms, this team of scientists discover the body of Nicholas Bolton, one of the people called out as having gone missing. Fun fact, the picture used for Bolton here is actually the senior photograph of Nathan Barnett, whom you might recognize as Dad from one of my other favorite creepy YouTube series that we've covered here on the channel several times. Go figure, it's almost like subscribing to this channel is a great way to learn about all the coolest series that you should be watching right now. Just a random thought that popped into my head, but you know, the subscribe button is down below this video in case you want to use it. Interestingly, Nicholas's body is covered in what appears to be some sort of black, moldy growth. 2 days later, on February 5th, in the video autopsy report, the medical report on Bolton's body shows that it contains a mutant strain of Bacillus bacteria, which is slowing decay of some parts of the body while completely overtaking others. The coroner...
Why have people chosen Taos as Canada's #1 German engineered SUV? Now the new 2025 Taos is even better.
Coroner questions A-Sync about where they found this thing.
Mr. Beck, may I ask, where this subject came from?
Which A-Sync must not have liked. During this video, a bunch of images flash across a CRT television, including one that states contract termination. Originally, I thought that this was a contract termination between A-Sync and the US government, but I actually found a wider, clearer version of this exact image in a trailer that Kane uploaded back when the Backrooms was just a school project. And the version of that document reads employment contract termination. So I'm guessing that the doctor started asking too many questions and was let go as a result. Next up on our timeline is February February 29th, 1990, and the upload informational video. Here we see Async send in another group of scientists. This is also the first appearance of actual named living characters. In the group, we have Marvin Lee and the camera operator Peter Tench. During their mission, Tench gets distracted by voices coming from an unseen party in a nearby hallway. He separates from the group briefly to investigate, but almost immediately he's met with a glitch that makes the rest of the team disappear. Without knowing it, Peter has jumped forward in time. We're gonna rejoin him in a minute, but back to the rest of the team. From Async's perspective, Peter's team didn't disappear, Peter did. He just vanished into thin air, and so the rest presumably returned to headquarters to report his disappearance. We see the fallout of Peter going missing less than a week later, March 5th, 1990, in the video Motion Detected. Freaked out by an employee disappearing with no explanation, Async creates a new enclosed control room just on the other side of the backrooms portal. They also rig up motion sensing cameras near the entrance to track everything that's coming and going throughout the space. And it's a good thing they did too, because that night at 3:53 a.m. we capture the image of a dark, blobby shape moving across the ceiling. We don't know it yet at this point in the timeline, but later we're going to learn that this is likely a black, gooey monster made of a mutant strain of bacteria. The very same bacteria that infected Nicholas Bolton. Kane has posted a picture of the creature on his Ko-Fi account labeled Bacteria. We are definitely going to see more from that guy later in the timeline. A little over 2 months later, on May 6th, 1990, another group of explorers are sent into the back rooms in the video Pitfalls. This team consists of an unnamed woman, 2 men named Mark and George, and Marvin Lee, now manning the camera. The party comes across a strange room with several holes in the floor and a door across the gap. One of the men carefully crosses the expanse, opens the door, and discovers a greenish glow. Instead of just saying what he sees, he calls over to Marvin to record it. But as Marvin tries to cross the room, he falls into one of the holes into a lower level of the back rooms. There, he discovers an underground neighborhood complete with trees and houses and streetlights. But things are just a little bit off here. Houses are built strangely. Signs are mirror reversed. Deep inside one of the houses, Marvin finds a room where someone's clearly been living, but whoever was there, they're gone now. When he hears a voice that's crying out, he goes to investigate, only to be met with another bacteria monster. This one chasing Marvin back to the hole that he fell into.
That is not a person!
Thankfully, Marvin's team's able to pull him back to safety and he escapes. The next video report takes place immediately afterwards, with the team returning to Async's headquarters and sharing what Marvin found. This clearly concerns the Async staff, but because of the important upcoming presentation with the US government, they decide to just paper over the issue for the short term. A makeshift wall is constructed, sealing off the Pitfalls area for the time being as they further fortify their control room. 2 days later, on May 8th, 1990, we get the upload presentation, where Async hosts several government officials to pitch them A-Space, their vision for the backrooms, an infinite storage and living solution. And they're just pitching to any old US government officials. Notice the DOE watermark. These are representatives from the Department of Energy, including this guy right here who looks a lot like James Watkins, the real-world Secretary of Energy from this time period. During a video glitch back in Pitfalls, we see reverse text that reads, "to deceive the Fed," which likely extrapolates out to deceive the federal government. I bet that this is text of some sort of internal memo at ASIC, warning about deceiving the DOE. Regardless of any concern, though, the presentation goes...
Hello.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, can you hear me?
Little bit, yep.
How's your day going?
So far, so good. Wish I'd gotten more done outside, but I got really tired, so.
That's alright. I took off some more siding on the sun porch. Yeah, more I take off, worse it looks.
Oh. Yeah, usually that happens.
So how's the dog?
Little bored. She's been napping most of the day. I think she'll get over it.
Yeah, you can't sail here with these kind of flies, man. It's terrible. Gee.
They won't even
I'll
hold,
get her tomorrow.
they won't even hold the flashlight for you.
My flashlight.
And you crawl underneath the camp.
I ain't holding nothing, man. You go there, man, to eat alive. You know, so you're gonna pick up, you dropped your mud off?
Yep. It's really pretty.
Yeah, I imagine. A lot better money.
You can have some.
Alright, thank you. Okay, I'll see you in a minute then.
Alright, good night, Mom. Love you.
Good night. Love you too.
Good night. It's my mommy saying good night.
As well, we see Async talking to the DOE about contracts afterwards, and one scientist confirms in a secret video that everything went according to plan.
Actually, that went perfect. We've got all the initial signatures, and the contract should be executed by next week.
Except, there was something that didn't go quite according to plan that day. Remember Peter Tench, the Async researcher who glitched out and disappeared? Well, after witnessing his squad disappearing into thin air, Peter tried his best to get back to Async's headquarters without any sort of guideline. And he finds all sorts of weird stuff on his little adventure, including a section of wall removed to reveal a secret area with forest print wallpaper, farm equipment, and the facade of a house. Eventually, Peter's able to make his way back to the backroom's exit, discovering the new control room that Async built after his disappearance. He's able to open it with his keycard, but it sets off a motion sensing alarm inside, at the exact same time that Async is in contract negotiations with the DOE. We straight up see Peter in the Async control room from a security camera's perspective in the background. Just so we're all clear about what's exactly happening here, this is over 2 months after Peter disappeared. When he glitched, he actually traveled forward in time. This really throws Async's leadership for a loop. In the hidden video recording 014, we hear a phone call between an Async researcher and his supervisor, Ivan Beck. Still on the same day, May 8th, 1990.
Wait, hold on. This isn't him.
As this conversation continues, the image of a newspaper fades on the screen. When reversed, this headline clearly reads, "Fiery wreck beside Viney leaves one dead." Now, Viney is cut off and could refer to either a vineyard where they make wine or the town of Vineyard near Sacramento in Central California. Either way, we can gather from this headline and the tone of the conversation that Async believes Peter was dead, and that after he disappeared, they covered it up by staging a car accident so Peter's family wouldn't ask any questions. And when Peter realizes what's happened, that he's traveled into the future and that his family thinks that he's dead, probably doesn't react all that well to it. There was likely some conflict with Async's higher-ups, which resulted in Peter either escaping the facility back into the back rooms, or Async just launched him back into the back rooms because he was a security risk. One way or another, Peter winds up trapped back in the back rooms, which leads us to the next video, Reunion. It's a few weeks later, May 25th, 1990. After Marvin's encounter with the bacteria monster, Async uses a remote control rover to return to the Pitfalls room and confirm that it's safe. They send more explorers and scientists in, creating a safe walkway to the door on the other side. Of course, we still don't get to see what's behind that door. Async instead decides to send the cameraman Marvin along with Mark and another researcher to around the Pitfalls room. Now knowing that there's a dangerous creature that roams through these halls, Mark is armed with a shotgun to protect the group. The trio head into a new area with no ceiling lights and floors made from white concrete epoxy instead of carpets. It's here that they discover evidence that someone's been living in this area. Tiles have been knocked off of the ceiling, seemingly as a trail to follow, and a map has been etched into one of the walls. However, before the group can really speculate about what's going on, they're ambushed by someone who grabs Mark's shotgun. It's our old friend Peter Tench once again. He's been living back here since his escape or banishment from Async. Peter laments that Async basically took his life from him, asking if they held a funeral for him. His family thinks that he's dead. The group confirms that yes, they did hold a funeral. Everyone thinks he's dead. Async is clearly keeping the fact that Peter Tench is alive secret from basically everyone. Despite being held at gunpoint, Mark calls for backup, only for Peter to shoot him and kill him as the video ends. At this point, we hit a pretty significant time jump, with the next video being a secret archive video compiled over a year later in June of 1991. Nothing really noteworthy happens in it, I'm just including it for completionist's sake. If we want something really interesting though, we jump forward again to found footage number 2, taking place on August 19th, 1995.
The color doesn't cover very nicely. Pretty color, but it's very thin.
Since the events of the year. In found footage, a girl in a suburban home discovers a small portal into the back rooms hidden in her garage. After experimenting with it for a bit, she's pulled in. Inside the back rooms, she finds strange giant furniture, a locked door that she can't open, and perhaps most strangely, a car crashed into a wall. This is clearly a car that no-clipped in from the real world. Now, I originally thought that this was the car that no-clipped off the freeway that we saw in the Secret Numbers video, but Kane confirms that it's actually a different vehicle. Given that Kane's also confirmed that the numbers car wasn't Margaret Watson's car like I previously thought. That means that at least 3 cars have no-clipped into the back rooms. If I had a nickel for every time that happened, I mean, I have 3 nickels. It's not a lot, but it is weird that it's happened at least 3 times. Anyway, the girl follows a trail of blood from the driver of the car into an area of the back rooms that looks more residential, but she doesn't find a body. Instead, she finds a room overtaken by black vines. These aren't just any old, creepy plants, it's the bacteria monster, who comes to life and starts chasing the girl. She runs back through everything that she's explored thus far, jumping down into a lower level that resembles indoor swimming pools. Eventually, she winds up at a dead end, but before the monster can get her, the room is engulfed in a strange green light that causes the camera to black out. All of this leads us back to the very first video that Kane uploaded in the series, found footage number 1. In this video, recovered by Async on September 23rd, 1996, we see an indie movie director named Kane filming with his friends before he trips and no-clips into the back rooms. After exploring around for a bit, finding weird architecture, items that are completely out of place, and markings left by previous people who no-clipped in, Kane encounters another bacteria monster. He runs away, chased by the creature before being cornered and presumably killed. As the monster takes him, his camera falls down a hole, no-clipping back out of the back rooms and into the real world. And while that's the end of the main uploads of the series, there is one final one that I should include in the timeline. The secret upload home27647.mov, which likely takes place during the early 2000s. This is just a home video with some glitchy sections and strange imagery, which I'm going to touch on in a moment. How do I know that it takes place in the aughts? Thanks to this frame right here. See that TV over on the right? This sort of flat-screen CRT television with the silver casing was popular back in the early to mid-2000s, meaning that at least part of the video was filmed around that time. So, stepping back and looking at everything laid out here, the main story follows Async's experiments, its employees, and its impact on the world. That much is obvious. But the more important story here seems to be the one that's hidden under the surface. Remember the green light that's popped up a few times over the series? It appears most prominently towards the end of the timeline in found footage number 2, but remember, it was also the first thing that we see in the series chronologically right now. In Overflow, a near identical looking green light fills whatever station we're in the early 70s, considering that the building from Overflow shakes pretty darn violently. Similar to what we see happening in Async's headquarters during First Contact, I believe that this was some sort of portal opening at least briefly into the back rooms. And not just any type of portal either, a time portal. And given how similar it looks to what we see surrounding the girl in found footage number 2, I wouldn't be surprised if she or her camera were sent back in time to the early 70s. I know this sounds crazy, but we already are aware that time acts strangely in the back rooms. One of the major events of the series is Peter slipping forward in time by several months, so we know that things can be physically transported in time in this universe. We also know that things from the future can intrude in the past. In previous theories, we've discussed how one of the secret videos showed us a cough medicine commercial from the early 2000s interrupting a Simpsons episode that aired in the early 90s.
That's the downside. Now here's the good part.
We can also hear a news broadcast from 2015 during the Pitfalls video, a video that happened 25 years before that broadcast ever aired.
Do you think that your current president, President Casper, will come visit the United States?
Taking that to its logical conclusion, something physically entering the back rooms and then exiting at some point in the past is entirely possible. Additionally, remember the name on that document from Overflow? Ivan Beck. Kane zooms in real close to make sure that we remember that one real good. Ivan Beck. Now, why does that name sound so familiar?
I'm trying to get hold of my supervisor, Ivan Beck. Mr. Beck, may I ask where this subject came from?
Yep, Ivan Beck is a high-ranking Async official. I think that this girl from found footage 2, or at the very least her camera, made it back to the 1970s and into the hands of Ivan Beck and an early Async. That could be the whole inciting incident of the series, creating some sort of time loop paradox. Async gets a hold of this footage of the back rooms, which then makes them want to explore it. They open the gateway, which breaks reality, and eventually this girl no-clips in, winding up back in time, starting the loop over. This might even explain the name of the video, Overflow. Time is literally overflowing and running over the edge. What's more, during their exploration, Async may have just found themselves another time portal. The only other time that we see a greenish glow in the series is behind the door across the room in Pitfalls. And get a load of this. As Marvin is falling down the hole in that video, we see a camera glitch and text hidden within that reads, quote, "While data could be inferred from the readings, nobody knew what would actually be found on the other side." What if what they found was a portal to another time and place? That would certainly fit our description. Either way, whatever Async is doing it is bad for the rest of us. One of the stranger moments of the series up until now has been this extended shot from the very beginning of Reunion, focusing on a coffee cup with the letters MLML and some coordinates on the front. Now at first I thought this might be some Roman numeral, but it's not actually a valid Roman numeral. You can't have MLM as a sequence in Roman numerals. So I opened up our trusty old Google Maps and typed in the coordinates, giving us the rough location of the real-world Moss Landing Marine Laboratories. So that solves the MLML mystery. And a bit more digging shows us that this logo is actually a riff on a real one that Moss Landing has used in the past. But the ocean messaging doesn't end with MLML. In fact, I believe that we can actually decode the biggest theme of the series based on a video just drowning in ocean metaphors. You may have noticed that I haven't mentioned one of the mainline videos of the Backrooms canon yet. I Remember. Well, that's largely because we don't know where this one slots into the timeline. There's no date associated with it, so there's really no place to put it. In fact, not really sure that the quote-unquote events that take place in this video are literal. The whole thing is just renderings of important places and people to Async and Backrooms lore, angled and reflected like Inception or Doctor Strange, all as a voiceover narration reads a poetic passage. It's more of an artistic piece, really, but it is considered part of the Backrooms canon. And here's the thing, the voiceover also has an ocean theme, just like that MLML reference. Just listen to what it says.
A manor overlooking the sea where when skies turn dark. The house was taken by the sea, cast down to the seabed with all the other forgotten things.
All spoken as we see images of the ocean, but also really take in what this video's saying. The speaker had a home that sat beside the sea, but it collapsed into it and sank to the bottom, forgotten. This is clearly a metaphor. We're not talking about houses and oceans, we're talking about the world and the Backrooms and Async's experiments making the world more and more unstable. Remember when I called out the last shot of Overflow? After the green light flares up and something from the Backrooms is sent back in time to here, we see the sky reflected at the earliest possible point in our timeline without any other Async experiments that we know of. But afterwards, we get more and more of that reflected imagery in I Remember as Async continues their experiments. This is even reflected in another line from I Remember.
Fleeting shells, sinking ever slowly, folding downwards into themselves, forever tearing along the seams of the sky until nothing remains except the eternal ghost.
The reflections, those are the seams along the sky. The tears in reality as everything starts to fall apart. This might have even happened before, in a previous reality or simulation of our world. In found footage number 2, we see parts of a home inside the Backrooms as the girl explores the area, including this part here with a strange banister and railway in front of an empty room. And here's the thing, this is almost identical to a room that we see in the secret Home 27647 video. Notice the unique bars on the railing, the way there's an open-air entrance in the room behind it and a door off the right wall? This is the same architecture, but one is in the Backrooms and one is in our real world. Want more proof? The girl takes a prolonged look at this painting before the bacteria monster wakes up and starts chasing her. And in the secret video, we again get a prolonged look at that very same painting in the home. And remember, based on the TV we see here, this video was likely taken in the 2000s, several years before Found Footage 2 takes place. So how could these details be in the Backrooms now? Is it another time loop situation? Maybe. Or maybe it's because these are from previous iterations of our world, of the simulation that was destabilized and collapsed into the Backrooms. In other words, the house that fell into the sea. There's a map shown in the Home 27647 video of the Ptolemaic system, a geocentric model of the universe that suggests that the Earth is the unmoving center of everything. And isn't it interesting that this very specific map that Kane chose to include in this video is very yellow? The last line that I remember is, "You have always been here." You have always been here. Everything revolves around the Backrooms, whether it be in a time loop or a simulation or both. It's the center of everything in the world. And Async's meddling has doomed the world to collapse into the Backrooms once again. The house to fall back into the sea once again. You have always been here. In this series, in this world, the Backrooms has always been a part of it. We're just a layer on top waiting to collapse down into it. And laying out the story Kane's trying to tell here doesn't feel like our world has that much time left. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cuts. And hey, remember when I mentioned the Dad channel earlier in this episode? If you want to check out us decoding the mysteries of the Dad Feels on YouTube, that video's on the left. If you enjoy the Backrooms, you'll probably enjoy that one too. Or you
air
just
for a
hit the
minute.
subscribe button on the right. Pretty soon, YouTube might have to get rid of its recommendation algorithm because of some lawsuit that's going on. So if you ever want to find this channel again, subscribe now, or, we'll just disappear into the Backrooms with billions of other videos. That's a big change that may happen at some point later this year. So go subscribe to
I
the
didn't hear
channel.
anything about that before.
Content from me.
I can't hear you. I kind of like this one without the eyes. I think that'd be interesting when I get her done. I feel like I should add something to this. I just don't know what. I can't quite brain today.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Film Theory, the show that reminds you that all the creepiest pastas came from the 1980s.
Hulk Hogan, he's got Pasta Mania in the Mall of America. I want to try to get a word with him. Pasta Mania? You've got all my Hulkamaniacs running wild. Yeah, I've eaten so many
God.
and Hulk Hughes. I kind of feel sorry.
Fun fact, that restaurant would go on to receive 3 Michelin stars. Well, I hope you carbo loaded on that Pasta Mania, Hulkamaniacs.
Carbs.
Tonight we're no clipping once
I hope I can get most of the garden done tomorrow. Finish the beds, fill up the beds, whippersnip the entire garden and yard.
A way to survive the endless maze of humming fluorescents and soggy carpets. But today, we're looking for something different. We're looking for lore. Specifically, we want answers. At this point, Kane's series is 3 months old, and in that amount of time, he's given us 10 videos full of creepy mysteries for us to chew on. What are the backrooms, really? Did humanity create them? Have they just been a parallel dimension all along? And what about the dead man that we find hidden in the middle of the maze, covered in a violent explosion of black? Who is this guy? What is this guy? And most importantly of all, should we be concerned about that monster roaming the halls? Probably, right? Usually a giant roaring threat is something to be concerned about. So throw on your hazmat suit, friends, and grab your tow line. Today, we're going in deep. First, let's talk about timeline, shall we? Part of what makes the lore of the Backroom so hard to crack in an initial watch is that it follows the tried-and-true formula of series like The Walton Files, Mandela Catalog, and Snap, where the story is just told out of order. The very first upload of the series, Backroom's found footage, actually comes last in the timeline currently, September 23rd, 1996. So, through the power of reorganization, let's recap what we know in the order that we know it. Our story begins in 1982 with ASIC, a corporation conducting scientific research into magnetism and or electromagnetic field generators under government contract during the Cold War. In our first video of the series, Prototype, a video that, no joke, released as I was writing this paragraph, so forgive me if I miss anything in it, we get our first event of the series. A metallic marble is surrounded by what appears to be electromagnetic field generating tubes. Notice how the shape and general design matches diagrams for similar real-life generators. The system fires up, and just like that, the ball is gone, presumably teleported to some space within space, thereby making the ball a subspace emissary, if you will. I hate myself for that joke, but then again, you don't pass up the opportunity to make the very rare subspace emissary joke. Anyway, by July of 1988, ASIC, emboldened by that initial success, has given their distortion field experiments a room-sized glow-up called Project KB31. According to the video of the third test, the goal of these experiments was to solve, quote, all future storage and housing needs. So it seems like the foundation of our story here discovers an entire other universe of endless space, and our first thought was a good place to store our junk. In total, ASIC conducts 5 failed tests to try and open a portal to this subspace before the 6th finally proved successful. On October 17th, 1989 at 5:04 p.m. Pacific, with the generator beefed up and something redacted being introduced into something else redacted, the threshold gets cranked up and blasts out a light show that seems to almost shake the facility apart. When the smoke clears, the backrooms themselves have finally appeared on the other end. ASIC has achieved first contact. Unfortunately, that's not the only thing that happened. That date and time, 5:04 p.m. on October 17, 1989, also happened to be in reality the moment of magnitude 6.9 fall hit the central coast of California, killing 63 and injuring thousands more. The timing here is clearly not meant to be a coincidence, as a secret unlisted video on Kane Pixel's channel gives us real archival news footage.
Hi guys, thank you for the love. If you could give me a thumbs up before you head out for the night, I'd appreciate that.
The Santa Cruz Mountains. In short, we now know where our async test facility is hidden. It's here, the epicenter of that devastating quake. And from that point forward, the world appears to be glitched. We see in the video missing persons that from October 1989 onward, huge numbers of ordinary people just start to go missing as they no-clip through reality, falling into this newly opened backrooms metaspace.
Huh. We've already got tons of WestJet points.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Should we?
I'm booking it.
Your next travel story is waiting. Make it happen with the all-new WestJet Rewards.
Space. All the while, Async is slowly exploring this new environment. On February 3rd, 1990, they have their first major discovery, a mysterious dead body coated in what appears to be some type of black gold or aged blood splatter. So far in the series, he remains as an unidentified John Doe, but my suspicion is that this is actually Nicholas Bolton, a missing person that we see at the top of the upload. Notice a few details here. First, he's not wearing a hazmat suit, which clearly tells us that this is not an Async employee. Instead, it's someone who no-clipped into the back rooms. Second, compare their physical appearances. Notice the wider nose, tall forehead, the hoodie, just like we see on Nicholas's missing poster. Around the same time, we also see that Async's government contract appears to have been canceled. In the next video autopsy report, we get quick cuts of various images on the screen. One image here is the top line of a document with the words contract termination. Things aren't looking too great for Async, and they're about to get worse. Just shy of 1 month later, the fourth member of an Async exploration crew is lured away from the rest by mysterious voices in the walls and ceiling, only to see his team glitch out of space when he tries to rejoin them.
Guys, can you hear this? Hey guys, can you hear this? Hey! Oh. Guys? George?
Now lost, he wanders the hallways, stumbling across a bizarre theater with burned remains in the middle of the floor, as well as a smaller crawl space with non-carpeted floors, forest print wallpaper, and the facade of a house with farm equipment out front. As he continues his search, we see what looks to be an exit into an Async control room, considering his keycard works on the door and his sounds of relief. But it winds up empty, and his presence triggers a red alert. End of upload. About a week later, on March 5th, Async rigs cameras to motion sensors to capture the action of what's going on in the back rooms while people aren't there. We see Async crew members constructing more walls. Yeah, cause that's what the back rooms needed. More rooms. Humanity, you dumb. Later that night at 3 a.m., the cameras capture a bizarre dark shape that seems to be moving along the walls or the ceiling. Looks like the back rooms monster's been watching some YouTube videos. Don't explore the back rooms at 3 a.m. Asterisk scary. Asterisk you will cry. Asterisk shooketh. Which then brings us all the way back to the first ever upload, Kane's original found footage video. In 1996, a young cinematographer named Kane no-clips through the ground, falling into the back rooms, where he encounters some kind of monster that attacks and presumably kills him, sending his camera falling through yet another clip and back out into reality. If you go frame by frame during this moment, you can actually see Kane's whole body here being attacked by the monster as the camera falls. It's a very cool little detail that I noticed. So anyway, that's the story that we've gotten thus far, but it leaves plenty of major questions for us to speculate about. What's the nature of the back rooms? What is the monster roaming the halls? Why are there voices and farmhouses hidden inside the walls? Well, let's start with the monster. Is it human? Doesn't appear to be. You can probably also eliminate animal and bird. An insect? Maybe some kind of robot? It looks a little bit like one if you squint, but then again, I've always got animatronics on the brain, so I'm a little bit biased. I've seen some people suggest that it could be a ghost or an energy monster. No, energy monster, not monster energy. Regardless, we can eliminate both options because it has a physical form. It is able to throw objects and grab pain. No, I think the Backrooms has already told us what this thing is. It's a mutated bacteria. Now, I know, bacteria are supposed to be really small, literally microorganisms, whereas the Backrooms monster is anything but. However, one thing that bacteria love to do is form colonial organisms. Animals that are actually groups of smaller animals all Voltron together. TLDR, I think that is what we're looking at here. A colonial organism composed of bacteria, possibly one that's been further mutated by exposure to human DNA, specifically a strain of a bacillus. That may seem specific, but there's a definite reason for it. You see, after ASIC discovers the mysterious dead body, they conduct an autopsy report on it, confirming that it's been decayed at uneven rates and they haven't been overtaken by a mutated strain of bacteria.
It's like portions of the body stopped decaying, and there's this thing. I took samples of some material. It seems to be.
That one I have no idea what to do with. You need to dry. You need to dry.
Benign, but really, I don't know what to make of this.
Well, don't worry, Doc, because
What makes Special K vanilla almond so special? The 12 vitamins and minerals? But what about the real almonds with that sweet vanilla flavor? Or do good things just come in threes?
I need to get a 3D printer, and I don't want to get a 3D printer. I do not want to get a 3D printer. I don't want the hassle. I don't want the space taken up. I don't want it. And I'm not going to have a choice. I'm going to have to get one. I can't seem to find anyone who can print me horns and antlers like I need.
You see, A. bacillus, also known as Bacillus subtilis, is pretty darn common, living in places like the human and cow digestive systems. It's a rod-shaped bacteria that's generally pretty harmless, and science loves these little guys. It's used a lot in experiments because it's very easy to genetically modify. This is one of the all-purpose cultures you'll find in almost any lab using bacteria for research because it's durable, it's manipulable, and it adapts in a very elastic way. And because it's so strong and resilient, it's been used to test out extreme environments like outer space, which I call out because later in the video autopsy report, we see that quick montage of images I mentioned earlier, and it includes close-ups of bacteria cultures along with rocket and space imagery, all seeming to relate to this very idea. Oh yeah, and it's also been used by the military. Between 1950 and 1970, the U.S. Army released aerosolized bacteria believed to be harmless over populated areas of the country without telling anyone, all to study what impact might look like if an enemy ever tried something similar. Another test was conducted on the New York subway system in 1966, utilizing our little hay bacteria. They kind of just dumped it in through the sewer grates and people dusted it off their shoulders. Here's the thing, Army, when you're on a New York subway, the biggest biological threat isn't the sketchy bacteria powder that you're dumping on us, it's the guy open mouth hacking into my face during the rush hour. Anyway, all this about durability and space and genetic mutation makes me think that our monster is a walking, roaring bacteria culture surviving in the Backrooms and evolving by coming into contact with the humans that keep no clipping in. And that's not just speculation either. Kane has seemed to confirm parts of this. Recently on his Ko-Fi account, which is basically like his Patreon, he dropped this picture of the monster explicitly labeled as bacteria. Something tells me you're gonna need some more than antibiotics to kill that bacterial infection. Now that is what I call biological warfare. So that's a little bit about monster, but then what are the Backrooms themselves? What exactly are they, and what's their nature telling us about the world this story is set in? Well, when talking about internet urban legends to base a video series around, the Backrooms is still pretty new. The original meme dates to 2019. The lore and branching ARGs all come up later, and these videos have all gone up in the last few months. This is a brand new evolving concept, but the bigger idea that it's grounded in, that the world we know has secret hollow spaces behind the scenes that we aren't supposed to enter, that idea goes way back into ancient mythology and folklore, probably as old as the psyche itself. The ancient Greeks believed that spirits of the dead and plenty of other things inhabited an entire underworld of caves and caverns. The 19th century French occultist Joseph Alexandre Baptiste Marquis de Levant, how's that for a name, advanced what he claimed was evidence of an inner world inside the earth itself called Agartha, that some people still think is a thing today. Even the idea of just ordinary maintenance tunnels and access shafts all over the world being connected to a more sinister purpose was part of the background mythology toward an appeal to more than us.
I don't want to get a 3D printer. I don't want to get a 3D printer. I just want them to print me what I want. I'm willing to pay, so what's the big deal?
He wrote the stories that inspired Iron Man and the Incredible Shrinking Man, as well as many episodes of Star Trek and Twilight Zone, including the infamous Gremlin On the Wing episode with William Shatner. But perhaps most importantly for us today, he wrote
Where is
Lost, an episode
Where
of
is
The
it?
Twilight Zone that was so iconic it would be parodied by The Simpsons years later in one of their Halloween episodes using really expensive for the time 3D animation.
It's like, did anyone see the movie Tron?
No. In both versions of the story, the character actually
Okay, where's the
finds
lighter?
themselves passing through an imperceptible rift between our dimension and another, unable to find their way out, getting lost in the
Where's the lighter?
repetitive maze. Sound familiar? Really similar to the idea of falling into the back rooms. The only real difference between all these stories is the terminology involved. For the original Backrooms lore, they say that you no-clipped through reality, a phrase borrowed from video games resulting in a player space outside the level. You're talking about older games when developers were still figuring out how to make 3D work. Now, Hidden Pixels Backrooms is
God fucking damn it. Where's all my shit?
reference to this. We have never heard the phrase no clipping, and we have not once seen references to video games around the world. In fact, Kane's series has taken the general concept of Backrooms and layering on a science fiction rationale to ground it in a very believable reality. And yet, the video game stuff, I think this is exactly what he's building towards. And the key is right here at 5:45 in the very first upload. Check out the rope. It's sitting there, just sitting right there. At first, I thought nothing of it. It's just garbage on the ground, whatever. But then, 1 month later, they make this at the midpoint of the informational video. As the Lost Async employee explores the smaller crawl space of the forest wallpaper, he stumbles across the facade of a farmhouse.
can't.
And
These
near it
aren't
is
good,
this,
actually.
an axe
Alright.
against the wall. Again, a singular object just
Have you seen this? Have you seen this? I need another one of these.
So the
Alright, I'm gonna be right back.
Stalked by a monster and random useful objects are just sitting there out in the open on the ground, waiting to get picked up. No real context around them. It looks a lot to me like a video game, the kind of video game you might no-clip in or out of. To me, this whole area with the tree texture wallpaper, the facade of a house on the wall, the random old-time farm tools that just look slightly geometrically off, this looks like the exact way older 3D video games, I'm talking PlayStation 1 era, would use polygons and flat textures to try and render outdoors and nature settings within level box designs. They would paint the walls to look like trees. They would paper the sky blue with textures. They would stick a house facade onto a giant rectangle to surround the door that they want you to go into. Check out the wheelbarrows, specifically the shadows of the wheelbarrows. Notice how they don't really move or shift position as the bright flashlight beam moves? While this certainly could be just 3D animation issues, it also reflects how many early video games couldn't or didn't use dynamic shaders. Shadows, if they existed at all, tended to be fixed and painted onto textures. This saved on processing power, but also gave objects a bit of a flat look. There's even a point where our async employee leans in close to the wheelbarrows where it looks like the wallpaper pixel smears into just color lines. Again, like you'd see in a video game with texture mapping on the fritz. So if the Backrooms is indeed the space you go to when you no-clip through the ground, like we see Kane do in episode 1, then we're looking at evidence that reality itself on our side of the threshold is also a simulation. It could very well be that this whole series is just a modern take on the Matrix, a simulation that no one realizes they're in. And when Async opens the door to the Backrooms, they're finding a storage area for the extra unused assets, the procedurally generated worlds, the levels that just haven't quite made the cut yet. As Kane explores the various levels in the series' first upload, we see office supplies and warehouses, but also residential-style railings and exteriors of buildings that are clearly indoors. Hardwood floors, repeating filing cabinets. It's a mishmash of random assets, like when you're exploring a library of 3D assets from something like a game engine. All of reality being a simulation would also explain the voices that lure the Async employee away in the informational video. Listen to the sound. These aren't voices that are explicitly trying to lure him away. It's not sinister in any way. It's just general white noise of a busy office or a party, almost as though reality is breaking through. While he's wandering around in a simulation on a computer, an office party is going on on one layer of reality up. But outside of the wall textures and random objects just sitting out in the open like a video game, there's one piece of evidence that really clinches it for me. Something that gets me to raise my eyebrow. Notice the date on this upload. February 29th, 1990. Here's the mind blow. That can't be correct. There is no such day in existence. February has 28 days, and 1990 was not a leap year. Hey, sussy baka. To me, this wasn't a mistake. Kane already picked first contact to happen on a day when a major real-world earthquake occurred. The dates in this series happened. It tells me that we're existing in a reality different from our own. One where a February 29th, 1990
God damn it.
exists. A simulated reality. And the back rooms is the boundary between worlds, where the separation becomes just a little bit thinner, allowing things like office voices and maybe even a virulent bacteria in the simulation. But right, will async be able to break through the boundary? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut.
The worst part is I brought a brand new barbecue lighter and a brand new regular lighter. And I don't know where either of those motherfuckers are.
Why have people chosen Taos as Canada's #1 German engineer SUV?
Damn it, I don't care.
Now the new Taos is even better.
Thanks to Google for sponsoring a portion of today's video.
More braces on that. The fuck is my lighter? It's not even by the stove. That's a mess this place is.
Fascinating. Truly astonishing. This could rewrite everything we know about Egyptian society. The world has to know. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Film Theory, the show that goes on weekly archaeological digs to look for that buried lore. Now, today we're doing something a little bit different. We're taking the script and throwing it out the window. You see, normally when we do a lore theory, they all build off the previous videos in the series like a wobbly Jenga stack. That way, bit by bit, piece by piece, we get closer to the truth. And if something's wrong, well, we go back and course correct before moving on from there. But what if someone else has it all figured out?
You have the chalk.
Face that already wobbly stack of lore is also built on, like, I don't know.
The kids go for a walk down the road. So I'm gonna build like a hopscotch course, but like 100 steps.
But seriously, there's always more than one way to analyze a franchise, and Kane Pixels' Backrooms is the perfect example.
See how much I can trigger the teachers trying to get the kids to walk.
Massively popular analog horror web series found right here on YouTube, created by the visual effects artist Kane
I have a
Pixels.
lighter.
It's
It
all about
matches. I
creating
need a
the
lighter.
ultimate convention of endless office hallways that people keep no-clipping into and then getting trapped in, as well as the scientific research company Async, who keeps trying to figure out what the Backrooms are all about. Right now, our working theory is that the world of the Backrooms is actually one big simulation. Async's experiments have broken part of the
So I can't use the big horns because I can't finish them up without heat.
Ideas. And because they've broken it, now everything is glitched, putting the world in danger.
Like I like them, but I don't know if I can work with that small space. So.
In the fan community, there's been another very popular solution to what we see throughout these uploads. See, several popular fan theories have made a connection between Kane Pixels' Backrooms and ancient Egyptian mythology. Yeah, you heard that one right. Ancient Egypt, complete with mummies and Anubis and the field of reeds.
Alright, on to the next thing. If I can't do that, then I will do something else.
Like they share all that much of
It's room. You need to dry. You need to dry.
Theorists out there who appear to have found a surprising number of parallels between the two. So that's why we're here, to review their evidence and go further, give more, and ultimately render a verdict. Are the Backrooms secretly connected to ancient Egypt? Ladies and gentlemen, strap in. It's Morty time. Leave your theories in the comments below. calling out the potential Backrooms Egypt connection was this Reddit thread by Alex Nemo was taken on March 23rd, 2022. Given the flurry of posts in the aftermath of Kane's first video, though, I may have missed something earlier, so apologies if I did. Since that first post, though, a ton of other theorists have flooded into answering the connection. The most in-depth example is this massive 6-page analysis from Zach Gardner on the entire Backroom storyline. Now, this thread is long, so I'm just going to touch on the highlights here. First, most importantly, the name, KV-31. In the Backrooms, KV-31 is the project designation that Async gives to their low-frequency magnetic dispersion system, aka their portal in the Backrooms. At first, KV-31 might just seem like a couple of random letters and numbers that got slapped together, but it actually shares a name with a real-world location, a tomb in Egypt's Valley of Kings, also named KV-31. Interesting. Let's dive deeper. Literally, the topmost shaft of this tomb was discovered all the way back in October of 1817, but the rest of the complex remained undiscovered until about 2010. Then, in January of that year, archaeologists discovered that the complex actually went much deeper than they first believed. Now, just on a surface level, that already seems somewhat similar to Backrooms, right? Our world exists on top of an undiscovered tomb, which remained undisturbed for thousands of years. Exactly how the Backrooms were underneath the real world until Async discovery. Egyptologists were also shocked to discover that the KV-31 tomb kept going down deeper than they initially expected. There were hidden layers, new floors to unearth as
Alright, I gotta find some place to stick you guys.
But the connections between the two go beyond merely the name and the general idea of secret tomb go back.
I need a
As
victim.
archaeologists work their way through the KV-31 tomb,
Think this
they
one
found the
too?
remains of 5 mummies from
That's not
Egypt's
bad.
18th dynasty. And now, look at the Backrooms. How many missing persons posters are we shown? 5. And when we do happen to find one of those bodies,
No, I think
Backrooms
this one's
appears
actually
dehydrated,
gonna do
dry,
that.
and leathery. Kinda like the remains of a mummified person in an ancient Egyptian tomb.
Alright, off with your face. I'll
I'll
swap off that bow too for something a bit more pink. That'll make it match.
On another note,
La 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 la.
60% off deals right now at Old Navy. Juicy looks, juicier prices. Get freshly picked looks for the whole fam this Tuesday through Monday. In store and online at oldnavy.ca.
Oh, you save that for another project. Oh, you are secure.
researchers of KV-31 installed a metal door over the shaft during the excavation
Oh my
to
God.
prevent any unwelcome intruders from entering the tomb. This is very similar to how we see Async erect a metal barrier between their control room and the back rooms, preventing people from getting in while also preventing any undead monsters from possibly getting out. Speaking of doors, by the way, other Reddit users have pointed out that the doors for Async's
There we go.
portal look awfully similar to the false doors that can be found in Egyptian tombs. These false doors are carvings or paintings that are meant to be artistic representations of a door that acted as a threshold between the worlds for the living and the dead. These were meant to be doors through which the spirits of the dead could pass from the earth to the afterlife. Given how deadly the back rooms have proven so far for anyone who no-clips in, let's just say demand would be high for anything helping guide dead spirits. In fact, the entire back rooms idea bears a striking resemblance to the Egyptian
There we
concept
go.
of the duat, or the Egyptian afterlife.
See?
According to Egyptologist
Minor
John
operation.
Taylor, the content for the duat drew directly from what Egyptians knew in their
Oh
day-to-day
my
life.
God. Look how happy he is.
Islands, while also incorporating more
I need
fantastical
a bow.
imagery like lakes of fire, turquoise trees, and walls of iron. And while the back rooms isn't drawing from natural features like rivers and caverns, it is drawing from everyday mundane things that we're all familiar with. Ugly wallpaper, fluorescent lights, wet carpeting. It also takes the normal and makes it abnormal, kind of like the field of reeds. And while, no, we haven't yet seen anything as outright fantastical as a lake of fire, we have seen farmhouses hidden inside the walls, giant chairs, and homes full of backwards road signs. All things that we're used to seeing in our day-to-day lives, but combined with other ideas that they shouldn't be mixed with. So that's pretty much the main points the fan-created Backrooms is actually Egypt theory. What's my take on it? Well, before we get to that, let's pause for a moment to thank our sponsor for this portion of today's video, Google. Have you noticed that Google recently added all these little badges across search, maps, and shopping to let you know at a glance that you're supporting diversely owned local businesses? Because honestly, if I hadn't been sponsored by them, I wouldn't have. And you know what? I love it. I am so glad that they partnered with me to tell you about this because I think it's an awesome new tool that more people should be aware of. Google has always been about sorting the world's information, right? Well, these badges empower you with the information that you need to support businesses that fit with your unique set of values. Suddenly, identifying women, Black, Latino, and veteran-owned businesses is super simple. It's literally at a glance. And this is just the beginning of how Google plans to support local communities. They've also made it easy for businesses on Google Search, Maps, and Shopping to mark themselves as safe for people all across the LGBTQ spectrum. That means that if you're looking for a gender-neutral bathroom, a transgender-friendly bar, or you just want to support LGBTQ-friendly businesses, you can now quickly identify those places. Our team is incredibly diverse. Even though all you tend to see is me in front of the camera, we have people from an entire spectrum of different backgrounds. As a result, we see firsthand how important this push towards inclusion is. Everyone deserves a place where they're accepted, where they can be themselves. Personally, I want to live in a world that's made for everyone. And features like this are a massive
Maybe I'm just
step
overthinking it.
Hopefully one day we'll get to a place in society where labels like this aren't necessary and everyone is just like, woo, let's all succeed together. But until then, Google's doing its best to
Well,
make that information.
Matt, this advertisement didn't have progress well, let's just put it that way.
Everyone belongs. You can find out more at belonging.google.com. Thanks again to Google for sponsoring that portion of the video. And now let's no clip back to the back rooms. Haven't laid out all the evidence. What do you think? Seriously, let me know down in the comments. I'd love to have your thoughts on this theory, because here's the way I see it. I'm not buying it. I love a good off-the-wall theory, and there have been plenty of times where I've been known to stretch real hard to get some evidence. But looking at the whole Egypt connection thing, what's here is circumstantial at best, and even worse, doesn't really add up to all that much. Let's start here with the biggie. The point to me that's the most compelling, the name. KV31. Yes, the fact that the async project name and this tune Egypt line up is a fascinating coincidence. I just don't have enough evidence to call it anything beyond that. First of all, KV31 is an entirely unremarkable tomb. It's not very big, like the seemingly endless backrooms, and it didn't contribute anything significant to Egyptian archaeology. But more importantly, there are hundreds of tombs all around Egypt. It's easy to hear a phrase like ancient Egyptian tomb and think something grand and mysterious like the pyramids, but in reality, they were just like fancy basements for burials. When I visited Egypt 10 years ago, I went to a few that were literally in the middle of some guy's backyard. No joke. We in the West have this mystique and allure attached to Egyptian tombs, but they're more common than the media would have you believe. Going back to KV31, the KV stands for Valley of the Kings. It's on the west bank of the Nile, right across from Luxor. And in this one area alone, there are roughly 63 numbered tombs, KV01 all the way through KV63. If Kane had picked any KV number between 1 and 63, this exact same argument could have been made. It seems far more likely to me that Kane either came up with a cool sci-fi sounding collection of letters and numbers that just so happened to coincide with an obscure date site in Egypt, or he knew about the numbering system in the Valley of the Kings, thought it sounded cool, and used it for Async's project name with little thought beyond that. Trust me guys, I get it. I've been there. I see a weird world-building detail like that in a franchise that I love and want to theorize about, and so I try and reverse engineer it. I search KV31 to see what comes up, and boom! First result, Egyptian tomb. From there, I would try to look for what else I could add to the theory, what other connections I could make that could be added to that stack of Jenga blocks. I get why people would want to go down this rabbit hole, because I would do the exact same thing. So let's keep going to get a sense of how stable the rest of the evidence is. Let's look at the so-called connections between all the doors, shall we? The archaeologists in charge of excavating KV31 sealed the tomb off using a metal door, just like Async seals off the entrance to the back rooms using a metal door. Sure, that's a connection of sorts, but probably doesn't mean all that much of anything. It's far more likely that the metal doors were chosen in both circumstances because they're common building materials that provide strong protection. That is just what happens when you're trying to build a secure door in modern times. So the idea that Async's portal looks like an Egyptian false door? I mean, they're both multi-tiered rectangular entranceways, but that's because they're doors. More importantly though, the theorists that are drawing the connection here overlook a major point. The false part of the Egyptian false door. They're fake. They were etchings used to simulate real doors. Kane's design for the backrooms door, meanwhile, appears to be entirely functional. There is the main entryway, and it's surrounded by cabinets that appear to have the necessary wires and electronics to make the main door function. This comparison also ignores that doors are
maybe too many hours.
taller and thinner, while Kane's design is short and squat. And the 5 mummies found within the KV31 tomb compared to the 5
might be somewhere there.
called out in Kane's series.
I don't think
That
I
right
have
there on the
anything
surface
pretty
seems like
enough,
a
though.
really solid piece of evidence.
I kind of like that. I made a bunch of these, but don't think they're what I'm looking for.
There's actually six posters with 6 different people shown in the video missing persons.
It's too detailed compared to the rest of it.
Shown for a brief moment before the entire scene fades into this line graph. But
Yeah.
what about all the bodies that were mangled?
I do like that.
Maybe
There's something else I can find in here.
There was some damage, things fall apart even further. See, the tomb had been thoroughly rotten throughout history, with damage attributed to both ancient
Flour is definitely something it needs.
bursting with body parts mummies to sell to tourists. Humans are great. If KB Grade 1 was really meant to connect to the backgrounds, that would imply that other people have been exploring the hallways before Async opened the portal. This graphic is comparing missing persons.
I haven't seen what I want.
Pieces from missing people skyrockets after Async makes contact with the back room. It's only after they break that sequence that the work begins. And finally, we get to the quote-unquote evidence point about the back rooms taking modern, mundane cases and twisting them into something unusual, just like the Duat Afterlife. To that I say, really? That's just storytelling technique 101. You know who else found everyday objects and then twisted up something uncanny? A brave little poster. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Blue's Clues. And some tells me that I'm not getting away with the back rooms as secretly the sequel to Blue's Clues theory. So what happened here? Why did so many theorists see Async's project designation KB31 and work so hard to connect it to the KB31 tomb? Well, I don't blame them for doing so. Like I've said throughout this theory, it's a fascinating coincidence. And this amazing community of theorists was doing their best to try and put the pieces together. Just to prove my point here. Before deciding whether or
This is
not
more
I thought the connection
peach than
between Egypt and the back rooms was even intentional,
anything.
I did a ton of additional research to see if I could find anything else that might strengthen this entire theory.
Too big.
Dots that no one else had connected yet. And if I looked hard enough, yeah, the dots were there, but just like everything that we've already talked about, they were just stretched out of the bounds of reason. For example, one could say that the back room's wallpaper texture bears a passing resemblance to a pattern of reeds, potentially another connection to Duat. But that doesn't make a ton of sense because the field of reeds is the paradise afterlife for Egyptians, rather than the endless maze-like hell that is the back room. See, when there's a mystery where something connects in an interesting or unusual way, humans like to see
I do
answers.
not have any
Brains are
flowers
hardwired
for that.
to find explanations for the unexplained, even if there aren't any answers. This is a phenomenon.
I don't
called
have the
pareidolia.
patience or the
Means that
time
people have a tendency to
to make
impose
more.
meaningful interpretations onto random data, finding patterns where there aren't any. Have you ever looked up at the clouds and seen a face or shape within them, or seen those pictures of houses that look like people that
Maybe we
occasionally
get
go
something
viral?
here.
It's possible because of pareidolia. Your brain is telling you that that cloud is the dog, that house is giving you the creepy side eye, not because they actually are, but because in nature to see patterns within the noise. And that's what I think happened with KB31 and this whole nothing burger of ancient Egyptian connection. A final example here, I thought that we might have been able to connect the bacteria monster to Egyptian tombs, specifically as some
Maybe
sort
I
of
could have put
manifestation
this
of the
on
curse of the
instead.
pharaohs. This was an alleged
Is it
curse
too
cast
late
upon
now?
anyone who broke into an Egyptian tomb. It became popular folklore after researchers
I still
mysteriously
kind of like the
died
bow,
in the aftermath of
even if it is big and chunky.
Though there were many
Alright, put that to the side,
speculative
see if we can
causes,
find
one of
something
the
else in
theories was that there was some sort of ancient bacteria or pathogen
it's
that was
cute,
dormant in the
don't get
tomb
me
that was
wrong.
unleashed by the
Alright,
Of course, that had a massive
see if I can find
impact
something
on
for
popular
this.
culture at the time. It's also worth mentioning that more recently, a pool of black goo was discovered in a 3,000-year-old sarcophagus. I mean, really, there has to be a connection to the bacteria monster, right? But here's the thing. There's no evidence or scientific backing that the curse ever existed at all, let alone that it was caused by bacteria. Instead, all the deaths can be attributed to more natural causes, like blood poisoning from a mosquito bite. And that black goo in the sarcophagus? Apparently it was just a mixture of stuff used as an adhesive to keep the sarcophagus sealed, not anything harmful to humans. Gotta admit, I really tried to find a genuine connection here, because the
I
idea
feel
that
it's
there was
not
an additional
big
layer
enough.
of backgrounds, that it was hiding some historical epic just beneath its surface of ugly yellow wallpaper, it's genuinely awesome, and Egypt is always cool to talk about. Like, everything the community pointed out can easily be dismissed or debunked, to the point that I just don't think that there's a whole lot there. The ancient Egyptian connections were interesting coincidences, but that's all they wound up being, loyal theorists. Coincidences. Film coincidences. And cuts.
I think that could work. Find the wires. Cut them. There we go. And we can stuff everything into the head, neck.
Keep things fresh with spring super deals. In-store and online, the entire. Save up to 40%.
Looks too small for the head.
For your kitchen, patio, backyard, and more until May 14th.
Dairy-free
I kind of like this one. We'll go with a bow again.
Is it good?
Is it good for cooking? Yes. Look at this risotto. I'm an idiot.
So it's good for cooking. Thank you. Dairy-free based on plant butter. Skip the carrot.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Film Theory, a show that's coming to you live from the back room.
Still?
Because I have no idea how to get
Am I in the back rooms? Because, God, this is like episode 3 of something. The back rooms. Let's try Coca-Cola.
The cult of Diet Coke.
There.
One of the most rabid fan bases on the planet. But why? What is it about this drink in particular? It's not the taste. It's not that it's got people addicted to the soda. In fact, it was never just a soda. And today, I'm exposing it for what it is. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Food Theory, the show you enjoy just for the taste of it. And today is a bit of a personal mystery for me, because I'm a Coke Zero kind of guy. I've talked about my Coke addiction on this channel before. Just heard it. Let me rephrase. Coca-Cola addiction on this channel before. And how after one of my best friends gave me an intervention, I switched over to Zero. I picked Zero because I never really got the Diet Coke love. It just tastes so awesome. Dusty. That adores the taste of
Have patience to clean
so
you.
you can imagine that me and
bath with
what
you.
came before had some heated debates about which was better. And it's not just him. The whole fan base of Diet Coke drinkers is on a whole nother level. Which side do you fall on? Let me know in the comments below. Now, let me just say that from the outside, the cult of Diet Coke is fascinating to observe. There's a whole community of people who bond over their unquenchable thirst for the drink. There are numerous celebrities that stan the brand, including Ben Affleck, who has a Diet Coke soda fountain in his office, and Tom Hanks pioneered a mixed drink called the Diet Coke Pain. No, you heard that right. It's a drink that's 1 part Diet Coke and 1 part champagne. Diet Coke Pain. Why? The cult power is so intoxicating that recently a YouTuber was arrested in India for setting foot on a forbidden island in an attempt to leave a can of it as a gift for a protected indigenous tribe. Bruh. So what gives? Why is it that this drink is put on a pedestal by so many consumers? Well, today, that is what I aim to uncover. Let's rewind the clock all the way back to the
I think this would be good for that.
the mid-1900s. Technically, the first commercial diet soda was the Spanish drink Nacasera, a zero-calorie citrus beverage.
You're getting that one?
That hit shelves in 1949. The first diet soda in the States, though, was 1952's No-Cal, a ginger ale made specifically for diabetics. And that's an important note. These early diet sodas were created not for weight loss, but so that diabetics could partake in the growing soda craze. This is also true for the first Diet Cola, Diet Right by RC Cola, which became commercially available in 1955. However, Diet Right would soon learn that an untapped market of health-conscious soda consumers, so it broadened its horizons.
Oh, I like that better.
Marketed as a healthy alternative to other brands. By 1962, it was the 4th highest selling soda behind Coke, Pepsi, and its big brother, RC Cola. The massive success of the niche beverage raised some eyebrows over at Coke and Pepsi, and within a year, both of them had diet beverages of their own. And while you might think this is where Diet Coke enters stage right, you'd be wrong. You see, both Coke and Pepsi were afraid of diluting their name brands on a potential passing fad. So Pepsi released their Diet Cola under the name Patty, and Coke, they created Tab. Yeah, that Tab. The soda that you probably only know of because it's infamously the butt of so many jokes. That said, Tab didn't start off as a joke. It started off as liquid sexism. What I mean by that is that while Tab and its competitors were conceived to serve a health-conscious consumer base, they were all aggressively marketed towards body-conscious women. In this era, diet soda wasn't sold on its
Yeah, it's much better.
It was a product that could help a lady adhere to beauty standards so that she could land a man. Take this notorious ad, for example.
When you can't be with him, be in his mind. Mind. Be a mind sticker with a shape you can't forget.
That's an oof. But despite that, it actually did decently in the soda market against Patty. Sign of the time, what can I say? But it eventually faced criticism due to its primary sweeteners, cyclamate and saccharin. In 1969, a study found that cyclamate increased the chance of bladder cancer in lab rats. This led to Tab's primary sweetener being banned by the FDA. So Coca-Cola switched up its formula.
FDA, remember when that was the thing in the States?
This would essentially solidify Tab as a gross tasting drink because high concentrations of saccharin produce a bitter, metallic aftertaste, an aftertaste that cyclamate had previously neutralized. With Tab now tasting like Magneto's backwash, Coke realized that they needed to change the sugar-free soda dude. So they put their top minds on a top-secret mission, Project Diet Coke. That covert team eventually landed on altering Tab's recipe to feature the newly approved aspartame. And thus, Diet Coke was born. Yup, you heard that right. Finally, I have an answer as to why Diet Coke tastes nothing like the OG. Diet Coke's flavor is actually based on Tab and not classic Coke. That's why there's also Coke Zero now, because it's the sugar-free version of regular Coke, and why I personally prefer it. Diet Coke was unveiled in August of 1982, so if we're looking for the genesis of the Diet Coke cult, this is where it all began. Now, on the surface, how Diet Coke indoctrinated America is pretty simple, but fascinating nonetheless. Because if there's one thing Coca-Cola does better than soda, it's marketing. And make no mistake, Coke is the GOAT. After all, there's a reason why Mad Men ends with Dawn right in the Coke jingle. There's a reason Santa put down the milk in first soda. And there's a reason kids say, Jinx, you owe me a Coke, and not you owe me a Pepsi, which would truly be the darkest timeline. Instead of targeting just aspiring housewives, Diet Coke's research team identified that baby boomers of all genders and lifestyles 20 years older and 20 pounds heavier. So they landed on a marketing campaign that would highlight Diet Coke as a great tasting drink that just so happens to be sugar-free, hence the original slogan. By now, you might be saying, okay, Santi, tons of sodas have marketing. What makes Diet Coke so unique? Well, I'm glad you asked, disembodied voice in my head, because no soda in history has had the rollout behind it that Diet Coke had. As it turns out, unveiling Diet Coke wasn't the only big event for Coca-Cola in 1982. They also bought a movie studio that year. Coca-Cola bought Columbia Pictures for $750 million. Yeah, as they say, there's no business like show business. While the purchase was mostly driven by a desire to diversify Coke's portfolio, it gave the company direct access to insert product placement into cinema classics like Ghostbusters. But more importantly, it gave Coke access to celebrity influencers. Yeah, influencer marketing long before the days of social media.
Doing some facelifts tonight.
Beverages available at Columbia parties were Coke products. And in Tinseltown, where looks were everything, Diet Coke became the drink of choice. Suddenly, Diet Coke was seen as the accessory to the stars. This, along with vigorous celebrity endorsement campaigns featuring the likes of Whitney Houston, Demi Moore, and comedy legend Bob Hope, made it so it appeared as if everyone who was anyone was a Diet Coke fan. Heck, even Superman and Batman were hawking Diet Coke by the end of the 80s. And it worked. It became synonymous with a very American brand of glamour. It was a symbol of having your cake and eating it too. If you weren't drinking Diet Coke, you weren't with it. Eventually, Coke realized that they were really bad at picking movies to greenlight, so they sold off Columbia to Sony in 1987. But to their credit, they did make a sizable profit on the venture, and they learned more than enough to keep pop culture in the palm of their hand. By the 90s, Diet Coke went all in on the fashion industry, putting their cans into the hands of models like Kate Moss to really hit home that they were the drink emblematic of the beauty standards of the era. So for the regular person, drinking Diet Coke was the key to being like your favorite celebrity. It made you feel like you were part of an exclusive club, a who's who of Hollywood's hottest. It also just happened to hit in an era of society where dieting and being skinny were all on the rage. Nobody wanted to down the sugar in regular Coke, so Diet Coke.
Isn't this fun?
If you wanted to be skinny and beautiful, remember the 90s, like the models you see in magazines and TV, then you gotta go out and get yourself some Diet Coke. But that was the 90s, and as physically painful as it is for me to say this, the end of the 90s was almost 3 decades ago. How did the cult persist past that and the problematic standards of the time? The crazy but still logical answer is everyone's addicted. Well, I guess I shouldn't say addicted because technically the American Psychiatric Association doesn't recognize caffeine or diet soda addiction. But studies are showing that Diet Coke and its ingredients could be affecting us in ways that even regular Coke doesn't. Let's start with aspartame, that miracle sweetener that put Diet Coke on the map. The way artificial sweeteners like aspartame work is that they signal to our brains the sensation of sweetness that we crave from sugar. Contrary to what you might assume, aspartame is actually sweeter than sugar, like hundreds of times sweeter. But this has the benefit of requiring way less to achieve a similar level of sugar rush. This in turn means one can is 0 calories. But the downside of those 0 calories happens in our brain. See, sugar in the natural world comes with calories, energy for our body. Our brains have naturally evolved to seek that sugar out. Your brain runs on electricity, like a weird biological computer powered by neurons, aka the tiny messengers that zap thoughts and feelings through your head all day long. These neurons shoot electrical signals down their built-in wiring, called axons. Think of them like tiny brain.
The people have
Horns.
spoken. Taos is Canada's #1 German-engineered SUV.
Maybe.
Now the
What
new
else we got?
2025 Taos is even better.
Green highways, but with fewer potholes and less people refusing
I like these
to
ones a bit
obey
more, but I need to
traffic
paint them.
rules. The electricity reaches the end of the line, it triggers the release of chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. And these are the real MVPs. Neurotransmitters are how your brain sends messages to the rest of your body. Like, hey, you're hungry, or don't eat that gas station sushi. And sugar lights up the highway for dopamine, otherwise known as the happy hormone. But with artificial sweeteners, the same pathways partially light up because your brain is expecting those sweet calories, but it never gets them. So your brain tells you to drink more. Eventually, the calories will come, right? You and I know they won't, but your brain keeps begging you to chug, hoping they will. You're already craving the next sip before you're done with the first one. It's not technically an addiction, but boy, does the shoe almost fit. Then there's the caffeine factor. And this is what really sets the Diet Coke apart from the Coke Zero. Upon investigation, you'll find that one can of Diet Coke has 46 milligrams of caffeine, while Coke and Coke Zero have 34 and 32 respectively. That's between 35 and 43% more caffeine, which means that Diet Coke aficionados develop a heck of a caffeine dependence, especially because they tend to knock more of them back than, say, regular Coke because they aren't worried about the caloric intake. So kicking the Diet Coke becomes a lot harder when you take those factors into account. But this is something that's been talked about before.
You're gonna need a bow, but I'm gonna need to get another color for the bow.
Because a slightly higher caffeine level probably isn't the reason everyone loves it so much. After all, it's still less than a regular cup of coffee. Other diet sodas use those artificial sweeteners. Any pseudo-addictive qualities in those sweeteners doesn't explain what's so special about Diet Coke. For that, you actually have to go back to the beginning. Or
Right,
I guess
we're going over
the
here.
beginning is coming back to us. See, back in the 90s, Diet Coke was the drink you needed to have to be part of the exclusive club of the Hollywood, like we covered earlier. Wanted to be like Batman? Diet Coke. Wanted to be that super famous model you saw on every magazine cover? Drink Diet Coke. And you're practically on a first basis with Kate Moss. But Coca-Cola realized that problematic beauty standards don't make a loyal consumer base. Yet here we are, with a cult on our hands, and a Diet Coke that has been seeing a resurgence lately. Diet sodas in general, in part because of Gen Z staying away from alcohol and becoming more health conscious. So, 0-calorie, zero-sugar drinks are the natural sweet alternative. But the fan base seems reinvigorated. How did Coca-Cola finally figure it out? Well, with some help from none other than Kate Moss. Yeah, the same model that drove the Diet Coke frenzy in the 90s is now the creative director for the brand. Suddenly, it was all the rage to be drinking Diet Coke again. Everything from the hashtag Diet Coke break to Diet Coke recipes trending on TikTok. The 90s coming back in nostalgic fashion is also bringing back Diet Coke. Some people have also connected the dots that this is also, once again, happening in an era where things like Ozempic are super popular in celebrity circles. You can argue we're kind of going back to the problematic days where thin is once again what's regarded as attractive by the Hollywood elite, but it's bigger than that. People probably aren't drinking Diet Coke because they think it'll make them more attractive. No, see, Kate Moss and Coca-Cola have shifted the marketing and perception of Diet Coke. Not gonna lie to you, I was racking my brain trying to figure out what was so special about this freaking drink. And it wasn't until I read about Kate Moss's campaign that it all clicked. Love what you love, by you. It's the campaign slogan that celebrates the loyal fan. It's supposed to speak positive and unapologetic attitude of Diet Coke fans. But what's interesting is the last by you. Diet Coke is no longer the drink you sip on to be like those movie stars or runway models. Drinking Diet Coke is a part of you. Drinking one is a message to yourself by you. It's genius and a little sinister. What used to be a symbol of a lifestyle you wanted to be a part of is now just a part of you, of your identity. Don't believe me? You know how every now and then Coke will have that campaign of share a Coke with and then have a bunch of names like sis, dad, or sidekick, or even homie? Diet Coke does this too. But as part of their new campaign last year, it added a twist. Instead of share with, they made it Diet Coke break buy with individual names. And this was unique to Diet Coke. Regular and Zero didn't take part in it. It's no longer something to share with someone else.
Alright, there has to be something on the wall.
And it's by
I see a
you.
cow.
It's
Let
no
me go check
longer
that
just
guy.
soda. It's personal. That's why it's so hard for so many people to kick the habit. Not because of the artificial sweeteners, but because Coca-Cola has made Diet Coke become a part of the identity of every one of its consumers through very deliberate marketing campaigns. I told you Coke is the GOAT, and this is exactly why. Coca-Cola made sure that you leaving behind Diet Coke is like leaving behind a part of you. Where other diet sodas just try and sell you a 0-calorie, 0-sugar drink, or some might even try to sell you a lifestyle, Coca-Cola has gone beyond that and made Diet Coke who you are. And in a weird way, the cult of Diet Coke is just people who truly love who they are. But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory. Buen provecho. And hey, if you want to quit Diet Coke and go to functional sodas, make sure you click the link on the screen first. And as always, I'll see you next week.
The PC MasterCard doesn't do tickets for your next leap into cash in. Convenient rewards on your terms for every side of you. Can your credit card do that? The new fee keeps the MasterCard. Summer starts.
I'm gonna wash this 3 times. I'm just gonna cut it off at this point.
Lilo and Stitch. Get tickets now.
Poppy is popping off, and it's starting a whole buzz around these new, healthy, functional sodas. But are these healthy sodas really part of our fizzy future, or are these claims as hollow as an empty can? Hello, Internet. Welcome to Food Theory, the show that puts the fun in functional. And speaking of functional, there's a new wave of trendy drinks that are popping up all over our grocery store shelves that we need to talk about. And its name is functional soda. Yeah, you heard me right. And no, these drinks aren't doing your taxes or anything useful like that. Instead, functional drinks are beverages that claim to provide some sort of health benefit outside of ordinary taste and hydration. Technically, this definition can include things like sports and energy drinks since they provide an additional benefit too. But
catch up.
we're not talking about those today. Instead,
Hey, guys.
we're focusing on the massive growth of one part of the functional beverage market, functional soda. That's right, sodas that supposedly has health benefits. And if that sounds too good to be true, buckle up. Dozens of brands have sprouted up all over the place that you might have seen before, but never really knew what they were. I'm talking Olipop, Pop, Culture Pop, Simply Pop. What's up with all the pop names? I mean, there are other brands like Sunset, Wild Wonder, and more. All these functional sodas are part of an approximately $440 million industry. In fact, these brands have gotten so big that they've attracted the attention of the big boys in the soda space. And of course, I mean Coke and Pepsi. Earlier this year, Coke launched their own functional soda label, Simply Pop, with 5 different flavors. And, likely panicked that they didn't have a functional soda to call their own, Pepsi went out and bought one of the biggest functional soda brands out there right now, Poppy, for $2 billion.
$2 billion.
Right,
That's
a
a
brand
lot.
some of you probably have never even heard of, just sold for a cool $2 billion. It's been all over the food sphere headlines. It's clearer than Crystal Pepsi that functional sodas are here to stay. But the question is, are they actually healthy? I mean, how can you
I've
make
never
soda,
heard of them
one
before.
of the unhealthiest beverages we have, into an actively healthy product? That is what I aim to find out today. So pop a seat next to Pop, you loyal theorists, and crack open a cold one as we find out whether the healthy soda market is about to pop off or if we're about to burst its bubble. So to start off, how do all these companies claim that their soda is healthy in the first place? Well, for one, they all tend to be pretty low in calories, with calorie counts ranging from around 25 to 50 calories per 12-ounce can. Compare that to a typical can.
No, thrilling, isn't it?
Clearly, there's a big difference. But low-calorie sodas are not new, and it's not what makes these functional sodas so different. You see, whether it's Poppy or Olipop or any one of the functional sodas on the market, they all claim to help your body in one specific way, improving your digestive health. That's right, it all comes down to your gut, or more specifically, the tiny microbes living in your gut. You see, your gut, but especially your intestines, are filled with microbes, like a lot of microbes. There's estimated to be around 100 trillion, with a T, microscopic organisms microorganisms living inside your gut at any given time. There's 10 times as many microbes living in your body as there are actual you cells living in your body. That means
The Ferrero Rocher chocolate bar. Crunchy hazelnuts, smooth chocolate, creamy filling. Make any moment worth celebrating.
Hello.
Ferrero Rocher.
means only 10% of the cells in your body are even yours. So does that even make me me? Who is me? What is something? What's even real anymore? Questions for another time. Where was I? Oh yes, gut bacteria. Collectively, all of these bacteria, fungi, and viruses are known as your gut microbiome. All totaled up, your gut microbiome actually weighs around 4.4 pounds or 2 kilograms. So if you're trying to lose those last few pounds, consider clearing out your gut microbiome. Or alternatively, don't ever do that. Because as it turns out, your gut microbiome is way more important to your overall health than you might have otherwise realized. Despite most of your microbiome being bacteria, something we typically associate with bad things like getting sick, the vast majority of the bacteria who have set up camp inside your tum-tum are actually beneficial. Those good bacteria
Waiting for the
form a
glue to dry.
symbiotic relationship with us, where we both benefit. We give the bacteria a source of food, and they carry out a variety of processes that make our lives easier. They have enzymes that allow us to break down certain vitamins like B1, B9, B12, and K, which otherwise we wouldn't be able to do. Those bacteria also break down bile our body uses to digest fats, allowing that bile to be recycled. But its biggest function is to break down certain complex carbohydrates and dietary fibers that our digestive system can't ordinarily break down. And by doing this, those bacteria create short-chain fatty acids that, in turn, help strengthen your gut. Thanks, gut microbiome. I don't care if you make me question whether my existence is truly my own. You're nifty. But it's not just our digestive system that's affected by our gut bacteria. Research has shown that a healthy gut microbiome plays a role in your immune system, your heart, and even your mental health. So clearly, maintaining a healthy gut microbiome is important. But how the heck can a soda help with that? 2 words: probiotics and prebiotics. Probiotics and prebiotics are probably buzzwords you've heard thrown around the food space at some point, likely on something like the packaging of yogurt. But you may not know exactly what they mean or why they're in your drink. Let's take these terms one at a time. Probiotics help your gut bacteria because they are gut bacteria. Normally, you'd find probiotics in things like yogurt, kefir, and sauerkraut. You can also find them in some of our functional soda brands, namely Culture Pop and Wild Horse. And more or less, they're the same bacteria that are already inside of your gut. The idea being that by consuming the good bacteria in your gut, it should replenish those bacteria numbers and improve overall gut health. As it should, because as it turns out, there's not as much evidence that probiotics are as helpful for the average person as you might think. In fact, the American Gastroenterological Association, the biggest gut nerds there are, say they only recommend patients take probiotics in 3 very specific scenarios. 1, if you're on antibiotics, since those tend to kill your gut bacteria. 2, preterm infants. And 3, those with a specific gastrological condition known as pouchitis, which is a side effect of, again, some very specific surgery. Oh, and also, looking at the species of microbes the AGA does recommend, the kind found in Wild Wonder and Culture Pop are not among them. Do with that as you will. So, while probiotics have shown to be no doubt safe and some do benefit from them, it seems there's no real great evidence that they help healthy people much at all. So, instead of probiotics, some GI doctors actually recommend patients add something else to their diet, more fiber, aka prebiotics. Prebiotics, unlike probiotics, are not live bacteria, but rather bacteria food. They're also just way more common in the functional soda space. Basically, every single functional soda on the market talks about their prebiotic ingredients. Prebiotics are a special kind of dietary fiber that we, as humans, are unable to digest. But you know who can and does? Our gut bacteria. Those fibers include inulins, root fibers, and soluble corn fiber. By feeding your gut more of these prebiotic ingredients they love, that actually helps keep your gut microbiome stable and healthy. This is the process of producing those short-chain fatty acids we talked about earlier. The only problem is the average person does not consume nearly enough dietary fiber or prebiotics every day. The USDA recommends that women under 50 should have around 25 grams
Still need to do this one too.
per day, and men 38 grams. Unfortunately, the average American only consumes around 10 to 15 grams per day. And for all all of you European theorists out there, you're also likely short by about 10 grams. That's a pretty big diff. So it would seem like a good idea. If you wanted to supplement your diet with more fiber, why not get it from a can of sweet-tasting soda? The question is, how many of these functional sodas would you have to drink to close the gap? If you pull up a can of Olipop, one of the biggest functional soda brands, you'll see that one 12-ounce can contains around 9 grams of dietary fiber, which is not bad. That's around the same amount of fiber as a full cup of green peas. That means, assuming you're already
Jackalopes are easier,
consuming around
but
15 grams of fiber per day,
material is
you'll need
material.
around 1 to 2 cans of Olipop to reach that USDA recommended level. But that high level of fiber isn't found in all of Take Poppy, you know, the one that Pepsi just paid $2 billion for. They only have 2 to 3 grams of fiber per can, depending on the flavor. That would mean that a woman would need to drink 4 to 5 cans a day to close that gap. And men get to 12 cans. At 12 cans, that would be around 300 calories, 420 grams of sodium, and around 60 grams of sugar. Plus, let's face it, no one's drinking 12 cans a day. So, yeah, 2 grams of fiber per can is pretty minuscule, especially when you compare it to some of the other brands like Olipop. It's kind of messed up that Poppy is out here praising its prebiotic benefits when it has so few prebiotics in it. And you know who else thought so? Consumers! That's why in May of last year, Poppy was hit with a class action lawsuit by customers for false advertising. The defendants claimed, as we just showed you, that the amount of prebiotics in a can of Poppy is way too low to generate any real gut benefit. And if you drink multiple cans to make up the difference, all the supposed health benefits will be negated by the elevated sugar levels. Keep in mind, this lawsuit started before Pepsi bought Poppy. So Pepsi saw they were getting sued for false advertising and was like, not a deal breaker. And what do you know? The day after Pepsi acquired the functional soda brand, Poppy.
The people have spoken. Taos is Canada's #1 German-engineered SUV. Now the new 2025 Taos is even better.
Poppy agreed to settle the case for $8.9 million. That's chump change compared to what Pepsi was paying for the whole brand. But that does mean if you have bought a Poppy anytime since January of 2020, you're entitled to some compensation. Yeah, very small one. $10 tops for most people. But paying out a multi-million-dollar settlement for false advertising isn't the only thing that separates Poppy from its competitors. Because Poppy also has a secret ingredient. You see, before Poppy was getting bought out,
How did they do that? Like, it's not like they're never going to be found out.
YouTube food series, subscribe by the way, Poppy appeared on a TV show you might have heard of called Shark Tank. But it looked a little bit different than the company we know today.
Mother Beverage. Mother Beverage is an all-natural, sparkling probiotic.
Yep, definitely don't want to drink Mother.
And most importantly, apple cider vinegar.
That's right, before Poppy was, well, Poppy, it was called Mother, named after the collection of microbes that it used to make vinegar, the mother. And we know some of these microbes must have been in the original recipe. Why? Well, if you zoom in on the bottle of the Shark Tank episode, you can see that it says probiotic, which, if you remember from earlier, means it contains live bacteria. If you search online for the nutrition label, you can see that it used to contain no dietary fiber and no prebiotic ingredients. The major selling point was its apple cider vinegar. If you could all join me in a communal blech down in the comments for this, I would greatly appreciate it. I mean, just look at Mark Cuban's reaction to trying it. That's the face of a man who's not even pretending to like that drink. Why would you ever put apple cider vinegar in your drink you expect people to, you know, drink? Well, apple cider vinegar, or ACV as the cool hipsters out in LA call it, is one of those things that often gets brought up in certain circles as basically a cure for everything. Some say it can help refine complexion, aid digestion, lower cholesterol, promote weight loss, detoxify, stabilize blood sugar levels, and even boost energy. Is there anything ACV can't do? Turns out, yeah, most of those things. Although, to be fair, there is some, albeit limited, scientific evidence for some, albeit limited, of these claims. Namely, regulating blood glucose and cholesterol in some people. There was also a study in 2018 that found that people who were already dieting, exercising, and drank about 15 milliliters of ACV, about the same amount of a can of Poppy, lost slightly more weight than those who didn't suffer through it. But as for the rest of the claims,
didn't suffer through it.
At best and dangerous at worst. I mean, ACV is an acid after all, so drinking it too often could potentially ruin your tooth enamel or trigger acid reflux. And you know what's funny about all this? If you go to Poppy's website right now, you won't find any mentions of this. claims. The only real mention of ACV anywhere on the website says, and I quote, "Every can of Poppi contains apple cider vinegar, which gives our flavors a mouth-watering edge. Seriously, try it." I'm gonna go with no thank you, but basically, Poppi doesn't talk about ACV anywhere, or at least they don't anymore. You see, I did a bit of digging using my old friend the Wayback Machine and saw that Poppi's website used to claim way more benefits from ACV, including the ones that aren't backed by science. But sometime around 2023 or 2024, they completely scrapped all of this from their site and changed it to just talking about its unique flavor. Their TikToks from around the same time were also gassing up the benefits of ACV and their product in general. And all of this
Green
was in
spots. Maybe I
contrast to
can
what
put
its
green
founder,
or something.
Alison Ellsworth, had said. In an interview once, she said, when referring to the benefits of ACV, that Poppi isn't toting a bunch of claims because there's not a ton of studies backing those claims up. But as she was saying this, Poppi's website was making all of these claims, and they probably stopped to avoid getting sued, even though they ended up getting sued anyway. And so ultimately, what we're left with is an industry of functional sodas that make a lot of promising health claims, but there's a pretty big disparity between all these companies and just how true those claims are. Poppi, it's a company that started off as a low-calorie drink with apple cider vinegar that praised its benefits. But then, due to the lack of real evidence for those benefits, they slowly backed away from the claims and instead started focusing their branding on the prebiotic drink. But again, there wasn't enough prebiotics in their soda, so they were sued for false advertising. So in the end, what is Poppi good for? A low-calorie soda with some fiber and apple cider vinegar that might do something? And that's kind of the biggest bummer I took away from researching for this episode. I had to comb through countless scientific papers, lawsuits, marketing materials to find out the truth about what these sodas are about. This is my job, and it still took me so much time. How can consumers ever be expected to know what's true and what's not? And in the case of Poppi, despite being sued, they were still bought by Pepsi for $2 billion because of the amount of money that they're bringing in the market right now. Look, there's a collective desire among consumers nowadays to take healthy eating way more seriously than we ever had before. But with that desire to be healthier, there's also going to be a wave of companies that are looking to cash in on that and promise you a cure for your ailments. Sometimes those claims are backed up by scientific research, but most times those benefits are over-exaggerated, or they're based on little evidence, or just straight up untrue. But they bank on people hearing the health buzzwords and whipping out their wallets, thinking that this actually not so healthy thing will be the answer to their future. Sure, they have less sugar than, say, a regular Pepsi, but someone convinced that Poppi or some other functional soda is healthy might end up chugging more than one and making up for that difference in sugar and calories. The success of Poppi and the money it's bringing in for Pepsi might encourage these other brands to start throwing around these terms like prebiotic and probiotic, all while charging you more than double what regular sodas do. Even the diet ones that don't have any sugar. That's not to say it isn't a good middle ground if you're not a fan of diet and you don't want to overload on sugar, but the premium price tag for a bunch of false promises sets up a bad precedent that other brands follow, taking advantage of us, the average consumer, looking to be a bit healthier in our diet. But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory. Buen provecho. And hey, if you want to see a company actually use its marketing power for water, make sure to click the link on the screen now. And as always, I'll see you next week.
All the fruits you see here are actually in the snacks. Get the Wellness whole fruit. Get Welsh's fruit snacks.
Did you know hair damage happens daily? Aveda's Botanical Repair Collection builds new bonds and repairs the 3 key layers of hair with the power of plants. Repair the past, strengthen the future.
This one brand of water is one of the fastest growing beverage companies in the world. But not only that, it's brought liquid death to the alcohol industry. But its next victim may be itself.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Style Theory.
Whoa. What are you doing?
You said we were doing a crossover.
That doesn't mean you get to come into my house and do my intro. You know what? We clearly need some practice. It's Wet and Wild Water Weekend. Wet and Wild Water Weekend. I do my episode, you do yours. Now could you just, please?
Fine, but we are not calling it
Amy, go on.
Your idea is canceled.
Hello, Internet, and welcome to Food Theory, the show that wants to and you know who else wants to liquid death? You may have seen it at live music events, at bars, or maybe you've seen their unique advertising. But inside one of those cans is nothing more than some good old-fashioned H2O. But despite just selling water in a can, Liquid Death has grown in just 5 years to become a company worth over $1.4 billion, putting it up there with the other big players in the beverage space. Not only that, it's bringing its competition down. But how? Well, the story of Liquid Death is really a story of its founder, Mike Cesario. Around 2008, Mike was attending the legendary Warped Tour, but he noticed that all of the bands that were performing were chugging down Monster energy drinks like there was no tomorrow. He got curious how their hearts weren't collectively bursting like some horror movie, and it turns out what these bands were actually drinking was what was known as Monster Tour Water, which was just water in a can made up to look like a can of Monster. And this idea of putting water in a cool can stuck inside Mike's head for years and eventually led to the creation of the canned water behemoth it is today. But there has to be some secret ingredient that makes Liquid Death so special, besides the water. And it turns out there is. Liquid Death has taken the golden rules of marketing, what are delightfully known as the 4 C's, and turned them on their head. These 4 C's have allowed Liquid Death to take a literally called Liquid Death and turn it into a billion-dollar company. So take a seat, loyal theorists, and crack open a cold one as we dissect how Liquid Death annihilated the bottled water industry, crushed the alcohol industry, and to find out who the next victim of Liquid Death will be. The first of the 4 C's we're going to be looking at is communication. You know, how a brand communicates with its customers. This can be via advertisements, email marketing, or some saucy social media posts. And Liquid Death takes all of those communication strategies and cranks them up to 11. This isn't your grandma's edgy Wendy's Twitter account, okay? Case in point, their very first ad.
Water is cute. Water is dead. Because it isn't safe for
I mean, they're out of line, but they're right. Now, it may not totally shock you to hear this, but Liquid Death originally had some trouble finding investors to support its canned water business. I know! Shocking! So, good old Mike, someone with a background in advertising for things like Netflix, needed to make a proof of concept. He made the ad you just saw and released it on Facebook. But the twist, when he released the ad, he hadn't made a single can of the stuff. There was no product yet. So, yeah, communications at the forefront of Liquid Death's brand before there was even any Liquid Death. Speaking of communication, are you tired of being asked to join the boring email marketing lists? Well, instead, why don't you sign up for Liquid Death's Cult, where you agree to be, and I quote, brainwashed through rare but hilarious emails. Or, if that's not enough, why don't you join their rewards club, where you have to literally sign away your soul to the company. That is not a punchline. That is real facts. And nearly 250,000 now soulless people have done so, myself included. That Liquid Death saw the satanic panic over things like Monster Energy and was like, hold my beer. Oh, wait. They probably just said, hold my can of water. A little worried, but I'll accept it. And of course, no brands.
How do I break you? So big.
Brand's communication infrastructure would be complete without celebrity endorsements. And these, I mean, my God, they're insane. Like the time they took Tony Hawk's actual blood and mixed it with red paint to create some limited edition skateboard. Or when famous rock star Ozzy Osbourne came on screen to warn kids to not snort the electrolyte powder. And who could forget when they partnered with a real adult film star, or so I'm told, to praise Liquid Death's environmental benefits.
Because even though I'm into getting my somebody who can really, something I'm not into is single-use plastics.
That's certainly one way to make sure it always comes to mind. But sometimes Liquid Death's off-the-wall marketing ends up rustling a few feathers. For example, when Liquid Death released their half iced tea, half lemonade product, they decided to name it Armless Palmer, a macabre reference to Arnold Palmer, the deceased golfer who's credited with inventing the drink. But apparently, either Palmer's estate or Arizona Iced Tea, who sells the Arnold Palmer drink, didn't find it funny. They sent Liquid Death a cease and desist to stop using the name. So what did Liquid Death do? They decided not to fight the lawsuit. But they didn't quietly back down either. Instead, they posted on Instagram that they were changing the name of the drink to Dead Billionaire, a name it still has to this day. And if at this point you're thinking, do the people at Liquid Death just think of the dumbest possible thing and then just roll with it? Yep, that's exactly what they do.
One exercise that we still do today, we ask the question, what is the dumbest possible idea?
How do I break these
no
off?
idea is a bad idea type mindset harkens back to Cesario's background in advertising. He hated working in corporate advertising because he felt that brands played it too safe and they didn't want to push the envelope far enough. Something that Liquid Death clearly has no problem doing.
Yeah, so I guess go to liquiddeath.com to get skateboards with my blood in it.
And all of this barely scratches the surface of Liquid Death's unique communication style. But its success isn't just in the way they communicate.
Gotta think.
They also need to make sure their product is actually worth the silliness. The second C that contributes to Liquid Death's meteoric rise is cost. And I'm not just talking about those dollar bills. Besides murder your thirst, Liquid Death's other major tagline is hashtag death to plastic. I'm sure it's no secret to you loyal theorists that single-use plastics have become a big environmental concern over the past few decades. From the fossil fuels used to make and transport them to the millions of bottles that make it into landfills and our oceans every year. But you might be asking yourself, why is water bottles are recyclable, right? Yeah, kind of. While it is true that most of these plastic bottles are technically recyclable, the process of recycling that bottle has become so expensive that a lot of companies don't even bother anymore. In fact, just 12% of plastic bottles end up in recycling bins anyway, and only around half of those actually get recycled. And even those bottles that do get recycled often get what is called a downcycle, where they are turned into a new plastic bottle, but some other lower quality plastic that it itself recycles. The point is, very few plastic bottles get recycled, and all that do are only recycled once before ending up in the bin. And that's where Liquid Death's aluminum can has the advantage. Yes, Tom, I'm saying aluminum. Aluminum. You see, not only do aluminum cans have a much higher recycling rate, around 50 to 65%, aluminum cans can be recycled an infinite number of times. And companies who make aluminum cans love using recycled aluminum because it ends up using around 95% less energy. All in all, around half of the aluminum in your cans is recycled compared to basically none of the plastic. Of course, that's not to say that the process of extracting new aluminum from the ground doesn't come with its own host of environmental problems. But while the environmental costs are stark, Liquid Death also considers the cost of your wallet and how it's grown its brand. When Liquid Death first launched, the water came from a special mountain source in Austria. Now, if you saw a water taste so you'll know that water from a single source tends to be more expensive since all global shipments have to come out of a single location, driving up the cost. In fact, according to Liquid Death, nearly half of their expenses came solely from shipping costs. So Liquid Death decided to move their operation stateside. But instead of switching to filtered lake water like Coke or Pepsi, they found two new mountain sources in McKay, Idaho and Bland, Virginia. Side note, can I just say that I love that the water from Liquid Death comes from a town called Bland? Heck, the way Liquid Death runs things, I wouldn't be surprised if they picked Bland as their bottling location because of its name. But regardless, Liquid Death is able to brand itself as a mountain water similar to Evian and
Feel the arthritis kicking in at my age.
The cost to ship it is significantly less, which again is important since shipping aluminum is always going to be more expensive than shipping plastic. All in all, at one grocery store, a single tall boy, around 19.2 ounces, costs around $1.99 per can, with a pack of 8 costing around $50. Pound to pound, this brings us to expensive.
Time is it? I'm almost done for the night anyway. Never got anything finished, but
Although, when it comes to the bigger packs, nothing will ever be one. Aluminum cans don't just help cut costs to the environment and your budget, but cut the cost of your health as well. If you saw our short about why Coke in a glass bottle is goated, then you'll know that plastic bottles tend to leak small amounts of the plastic into the beverage. These microplastics can then invade and stay in your tissues and can cause long-term damage. Meanwhile, aluminum cans tend to absorb some of the ingredients in things like soda, leading to a blander taste. But when you're selling water from Bland, Virginia, who cares? It's water! I suspect this is why people who taste Liquid Death love it so much, and why I see Liquid Death everywhere. Speaking of, it doesn't matter how great you are at marketing your product or the supposed benefits of it. If no one can buy it, it doesn't really matter. Nowadays, you can buy Liquid Death just about anywhere, from your local 7-Elevens to big grocery stores. It even has its own special shop page on Amazon. But let's play a little bit of a game. By taking a look at Liquid Death and its general aesthetic, which big retailer do you think was the first to give Liquid Death its big break? Believe it or not, it was Liquid Death has a big Trader Joe's energy, but apparently Whole Foods of all things was the first to join the cult of Liquid Death and rolled it out in their stores nationwide, which is practically unheard of for a new product like that. Liquid Death also recently partnered with Live Nation, the leading live entertainment company, to become the
Come on, you
exclusive
motherfucker.
launch provider for its events, meaning that millions of people not only have it available within reach,
Good. Whew. Fun fact about these eyes, if you didn't know. They're clear. They're thick, and their back is actually glitter paper.
They even sell, well, allow me to tell you a story. One day, in my
And then when you put it on,
office in Raleigh,
and then you
I
put
was
the
just
white on,
minding my business, writing scripts,
There
when I
you
heard
go.
this uproarious screaming coming from the analytics office. I thought that maybe Food Theory had reached 6 million subscribers. Turned out no. But if you hit the subscribe button down below, you could help us get there. But no, when I walked into their office, Sam and Josiah were going absolutely feral. And what, pray tell, had gotten these normally straight-laced guys to lose their gosh dang minds? Apparently, Liquid Death had paired with the ice cream parlor chain Van Leeuwen to make a hot fudge sundae sparkling water. And before you think that Liquid Death has gone too far, Josiah said it was quite nice and did taste like a 20-calorie hot fudge sundae. Did he give me any? No, and I will never forgive him. So yet again, Liquid Death might do the dumbest thing possible, but when it comes down to it, they sure know what their customers really want, even if they don't know it yet. The last of the 4 C's that turned one guy's dumb dream of canned water into an empire is the customer. You know, us. The ones with money who have to choose whether to buy your thing or not. Many a company end up releasing products that no one actually needs, and as a result, they tend to flop. Looking at you, Apple Vision Pro. But before Liquid Death came around, I can assure you that people were not clamoring for watery cans. Monster already had the product, and they still didn't think people would want to buy it, although they do sell it now. The secret to Liquid Death infiltrating the market comes down to what I hinted at the top of the episode. It's packaging. Not the name or the cool skull, but the packaging itself. It looks a whole lot like a can of beer, and that's no accident. You see, drinking alcohol isn't as popular as it once was. Drinking rates, especially among young people, have dropped dramatically over the past few decades. Just 62% of adults under 35 say they drink, which is down a whole 10% from 20 years ago. And even among those who do drink, the amount and frequency of drinking has also decreased. But just because we drinking less doesn't
Fuck you.
like to go out and have a good time with them. Insert Liquid Death, a non-alcoholic and overall thirst-quenching drink that allows you to look like you're drinking, but without all the side effects that come with it. In fact, one of the first places that Liquid Death tried to sell itself to was in bars. However, according to the bars they went to, bottled water just never sold. But once they started selling Liquid Death, they couldn't keep the stuff in stock. It may not be cool to drink Dasani at a bar, or anywhere for that matter, but it is cool to drink a can that looks like an ordinary beer with a cool skull and an edgy name. And you know what? Liquid Death isn't just here to disrupt the bottled water market or fit in with the beer drink. It's here
Kind of
to
like that one. I don't know. Maybe the teal isn't the one, but.
on scorched earth. And it's doing it all.
Ooh.
Alcohol consumption is at a several decades low. Here's a tough
Something's wrong with this one. I think the eye is too high. Should have been lower.
When consumers 35 and younger have been drinking less and less alcohol, it's opened up a bigger and bigger space for Liquid Death to come in and convert even more people over to drinking water
Hang on a
and
second.
taking care of their bodies. But in a
Oh,
totally
fuck
meta
off,
way.
you
And
stupid
Liquid
thing.
Death
There we go.
also has its sights on the fastest growing market in the alcohol realm, seltzers. It's been a meteoric rise for seltzers of
Definitely
all
not
kinds, and it's
green.
not slowing down anytime soon. And instead of playing nice
think I
with
like
the
this one the best.
competition, they've decided to release their own carbonated water so that any consumers that are fans of the bubbles stick to their death instead of the claw. The most impressive thing is they're doing all of this while sticking true to their brand, which is never playing it safe. And I'm all for it. I'm sure you've noticed that corporate branding has gotten a little meh lately. Like every day.
A tasty and nutritious snack. Let's call that a win. Yogo Nano. It's your snack champ. Feels like the whole world.
Come on. Really?
From you. Thanks. Like bank fees. Seriously?
Days, some company, especially in the food space, is rebranding their identity. But instead of making something new, fresh, and original, they're all aiming for retro, stale, and bland. And I'm not just talking about the town in Virginia. And you know why they're doing this? Because they're playing it safe. Companies used to push the envelope all the time. During the height of the Coke and Pepsi Cola war, the two soda giants wouldn't be afraid to get in the mud and throw some serious shade. Like that Pepsi ad where a kid buys 2 Cokes at a vending machine only so he can be tall enough to reach the Pepsi button. Savage. Today, paper towel commercials won't even name the other brand they're competing with. Probably here of getting armless Palmer. I want Oreo and Chips Ahoy to go at it like Kendrick and Drake did. I want Oreos to tell Chips Ahoy that they're not like us. I want these brands to do something. But the problem all these companies face is one that Liquid Death will likely run into soon. And that is the fact that it's so successful. There's a reason why the Cokes of the world don't hire adult film stars for their commercials. It would probably piss off a large part of their audience. Even worse, it might drive them away. For a company that's as large as Coke, you need to provide and get in the homes and hands of every person on the planet, because if you're not getting busy growing, you're getting busy dying. These are multinational, multi-billion-dollar companies. If they make a branding choice that people don't like, it could murder their bottom line. It's not just about corporate greed either. I mean, it is, but it isn't. Because if the company suddenly tanks because they've made a marketing misstep, that's potentially hundreds of jobs that they have to cut. Thousands of people potentially affected. Liquid Death is still relatively small and growing. Sure, they made $263 million in revenue last year, but Coca-Cola literally makes that every 2 days. Even Constellation Brands, the company that owns the best-selling beer in the US, Modelo Especial, made $9.3 billion last year. Being a smaller company affords Liquid Death the luxury of being avant-garde, of being edgy, because you don't care about being in every home in the world. You're just trying to grow. But when you start to scale and suddenly increase your number of employees by 32% from 2023 to 2024, the stakes start to scale for your company. And suddenly, losing customers might mean losing your own employees. Heck, even at a smaller scale, look at us here at Theorist. Sure, there are suggestions I get, or things I might personally like to explore, but I have to take into consideration that it's not just about me. We have a
Yeah, we're missing a crystal, but that's okay.
Keep in mind the people watching. The last thing I would want is to lose your trust just to be a little more edgy for views. And we have a wonderful team that we employ too. My decisions can affect their livelihoods, and I wouldn't dream of putting them at jeopardy either. So yeah, they may have been able to be the risk takers this far, but with all the success and growth they found themselves in, Liquid Death may have just themselves over. But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory. Bon appetit. And what happens when a once-beloved brand needs a reboot? Click here to learn why Crumble rebranding was actually a big PR cover-up. And as always, I'll see you next week.
I have seen a video circulating online. Sorry, I can't get myself straight right now. I have seen a video circulating online that says that this lemonade should be illegal. Illegal? I mean, it's lemonade. Lemons are delicious. It's a little bit bitter, a little bit sour. It's great. It is balanced, as all things should be. Illegal? No. Push all of that aside. What they are claiming is that this right here has more caffeine than 4 espressos worth of caffeine. Excuse me. Find that a little hard to believe. But also seems kind of unhealthy. Tara, what are you doing? Are you trying to kill me? It's time we find out.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Food Theory, the only show that gets a buzz from being right. So there, if you're a Chipotle Chad or a Baja Fresh Brad, you're going to want to pay attention to this one, because today we're talking about Panera Bread's newest product, Crack in a Cup. See, about a month ago, a video was uploaded on TikTok by a user named Sarah Bouse. In it, she takes minutes to rant about one of Panera's newest menu items, their mango yuzu citrus lemonade. But this isn't your typical selfie car rant video about restaurant lemonade, my friend. Oh no, this one's a bit unhinged.
I have learned something that should be illegal. 100% should be illegal. So it has to do with kids' drink. Give me a second. So at Panera, I cannot get myself straight.
Pretty soon you start to realize what exactly is going on here.
This is the mango yuzu citrus charged lemonade. When I'm sitting there, I'll drink 4 or 5 of these. The regular size has 82 grams of sugar. Let's push that aside. It has 260 milligrams of caffeine. An espresso, I looked it up, has 63 milligrams of caffeine. 63 for 1 shot of espresso.
She's essentially drugged out of her mind on caffeine. Practically leaks through the screen onto your scrolling thumb as she rants. She is literally a real-life version of Tweak from South Park.
I pulled out my hair!
But it's weird, right? The lemonade having over 4 times the amount of caffeine as an espresso? There's no way. I thought this whole thing had to have been a bit. A joke that she was just putting on for the camera to go viral, but no. She was making the video because she legitimately wanted people to know and thought that Panera was breaking the law by not labeling their lemonade accordingly.
I don't have caffeine very much. I thought I'm not used to caffeine like that, and I feel like the Hulk. Panera, who's gonna create a product with 260 milligrams of caffeine? Look at my thing. I'm dying.
Also, can I just call out that I love the fact that she finishes this rant with one final slurp? She'd be tripping on that caffeine, but you know she needs to take that final swig. Besides being just pure internet gold, her claims really piqued my curious interest. In a lot of cases like this, whether it's hot coffee from McDonald's or random car rants about lemonade, our first impulse is to label the person as kind of crazy, or negligent, or a Karen, or whatever. But history has shown that a lot of times these people wind up being right. So, is this a case of one random Panera patron ripping off a local restaurant to be her personal WeWork?
I work at Panera. No. I work in a Panera because I don't want to pay for a co-working space, but working at home makes me want to take my own grief because I'm alone.
Or is there something else going on here with Panera actively duping people into megadosing on caffeine? Is the lemonade actually more caffeinated than the coffee? And if it is Panera doing enough to make that fact clear to its consumers? And lastly, is Sarah in this video literally dying of a caffeine overdose? I think we need to look into all of it. What say you, Sarah?
Whoa, this is gonna be whirlwind.
So, looking at the online nutrition facts for Panera's new line of charged lemonades, we see that they come in 3 flavors.
Hi guys, thanks for stopping by. If you'd be kind enough to slap me with a high five on your, or a thumbs up on your way out, that'd be great. Just making some new buddies.
Milligrams of caffeine coming from a combination of coffee extract and guarana extract. So she's definitely right about the amounts, but how much caffeine is that really? And what's that going to do to your body? Well, the first place to start here is with the science. Most of us understand that caffeine is a neurostimulant and vasodilator, which means that the more you drink, the more your blood vessels are expanding, allowing blood to rush to your brain and limbs. This blood rush causes you to feel more awake. But if you have too much, you start to feel jittery. Now, Sarah says that on a typical day, she's refilling her cup multiple times.
I'll drink 4 or 5 of these. I was always like, man, when I work at Panera, I feel great.
Running the math, she's been consuming a whopping 1,100 to 1,300 milligrams of caffeine a day. A staggering number when you consider that an average cup of coffee contains between 95 and 140 milligrams. In fact, drinking 4 cups of coffee a day qualifies you as a heavy coffee drinker. And yet, here's Sarah. 4 cups a day is a third of the caffeine that she's consuming through this lemonade. Even if you compare her Panera caffeine intake to energy drinks that hinge on giving you, energy, she's still in the artery melting stratosphere. Those drinks typically contain about 110 milligrams of caffeine for an entire can. Basically, Sarah here's chugging like 11 Red Bulls per day, 6.5 tall Starbucks dark roasts, or 28 cans of Diet Coke. I'm a Diet Coke addict who drinks way too much, and even I can recognize that that is an alarming amount of soda. It's no wonder that she feels so good working at Panera when she's literally being drugged into believing it gives her supercharged work performance. So Sarah's consuming an insane amount of caffeine from these charged lemonades. That much is undeniable. But is Panera acting illegally in any of this? Is Panera negligent in some way? Should they be doing a better job of telling people what's inside of this stuff? Well, let's actually talk about that. I went to my local Panera and took some photos of the charged lemonade area, and immediately you can see that these aren't marketed as energy drinks. Sure, they're named charged lemonades, but
I'll probably do something with that.
The flavor heading, there's
Maybe.
fine print that says it has as much caffeine as the dark roast coffee, but it's small. And you definitely lost my interest as soon as they started the sentence with plant-based and clean. And yeah, there's the nutrition facts below that, but 260 milligrams of caffeine? What's that mean? Is that a lot? A little? Unclear unless I'm actively taking out my phone and looking up what that amount is. And again, all of this is marketed under the name lemonade. It's not a drink that you normally associated with being infused with so much caffeine that it pops your eyeballs out of your skull. So the labeling could certainly be doing a lot more to communicate that this stuff is the caffeine equivalent of jet fuel, but it's actually the portion of the lemonade that's even more sus. These lemonades are located right next to the soda fountain, not the coffee stand. Sure, soda has caffeine, but not nearly to the level of these lemonades. And perhaps most damning of all, this is historically where the normal, non-caffeinated lemonades have sat for years in the restaurant. I know, because I go to Panera all the time, and I always like trying the new lemonades and teas that sit there. In fact, just like Sarah, before I ever saw her video, I too noticed the new flavors and tried them on a recent visit, thinking that they were just regular lemonades and teas, because it's always been just regular tea and lemonade in that area. Granted, my mind didn't melt through my ears because they always tend to have way too many empty calories and sugar for my taste, so I wasn't chugging like 5 cups of the stuff, but still, I am anecdotal proof that the labeling doesn't make it clear what these things actually are. Overall, there's just something fishy about all of this. Like, why are they hiding the fact that these are caffeinated in some sort of tiny crates?
Ow.
Who's gonna create a product for 263 milligrams of caffeine?
Who's gonna do that, you ask? Well, could it be a company that wants to make sure that you feel great, awake, and energized after every trip to Panera, even if you don't quite understand why? Caffeine does have addictive properties, after all, and can lead people to developing independence. And people on caffeine are more likely to make impulsive decisions, like buying more stuff from Panera. This also isn't the first time a company has done something like this either. Starbucks Refreshers, probably the main competitor to these lemonades, have come under fire recently for how much caffeine is hidden inside a product that's largely aimed at kids on social media. I mean, when you look at the fun pictures and overall marketing, it's drinks are made for.
My new question, I may have a problem.
You do, or at least you might. You may just be secretly getting fed doses of caffeine so you develop a dependence on these drinks and these restaurants that serve them. And mind you, those refreshers contain almost 6 times less caffeine than the lemonade that's being served at Panera. It's kind of like Panera saw an opportunity and decided to go nuclear with the whole thing. So as we've seen, the charged lemonade caffeine threat is real. Seems pretty darn dishonest in its marketing, and it seems like there may just be sinister intentions behind all of it. But is any of it illegal, like Sarah initially claimed? The FDA often works in areas where consumer expectations or knowledge don't match the products or how they're marketed, so just what does the FDA have to say about caffeine disclosures? Well, the FDA, as we've talked about in the past, is the organization charged with regulating the labeling requirements for packaged products that you see on grocery store shelves. We know
At least
from
it
previous
was.
episodes that they care about all kinds of things, like sugar and fat and cholesterol, but do they care about caffeine? Oh, you bet they do, especially since the world's favorite little addiction has been up in the ante in recent years. Americans' love of working late, partying hard, and recording all of it for social media clout has led to a lot of caffeination in order for all of us to stay functional, with the biggest caffeine revolution coming from energy drinks.
I don't know what to
starting
do
in the
that
early
soccer ball, but I gotta
2000s.
do
Red
something
Bull
with
has
it.
technically been offering us wings since 1984, but it wasn't until it hit the shelves in the US in the late 90s that it really took off, where it replaced coffee for people who, I don't know, want something that tastes even worse than coffee. This stuff is way too sweet for me, honestly, but it did spawn a huge number of competitors in the market, including famous energy drinks like Rockstar and Monster Energy. The point is, though, that all of these products are labeled as energy drinks first and foremost, both in their branding and in their labeling. For caffeinated beverages, there are 2 main pieces of information that are contained on that label. First, serving size, caffeine per serving, per container, or both.
Time is
This
it?
also needs to be printed
Almost
separately
done.
from the nutrition facts so people don't mistake it for just another ingredient. Secondly, the label must include a warning statement, not intended or recommended for children, pregnant or breastfeeding women, or those sensitive to caffeine. These are explicit warnings on the cans to help prevent people who shouldn't be drinking a lot of caffeine from drinking it. And it's not enough just to say how much caffeine's in it, you have to explicitly label it as a high caffeine product that certain people should not drink. Look, it's right there on every Monster Energy drink. It's not huge, and it's certainly not in the same neon letters, but at least you can find it somewhere on there. So how does any of this apply to Panera? Bizarrely, it doesn't. Those labels that you see on energy drinks aren't exactly an age-old policy, as required as you might assume. Did I mention that energy drinks surged in popularity in the late 90s after Red Bull came to the US? Well, in that same time period, there's starting to be more and more incidents of people ending up in the ER from, you guessed it, caffeine overdose side effects. And I don't mean side effects like, oh, I had too much caffeine and energetically danced my way off a cliff. I mean seizures, liver and injury, heart arrhythmia, psychotic symptoms. From 2005 to 2011, ER visits related to caffeine side effects increased tenfold, according to the Journal of Caffeine Research from 2013. Was it all just the result of energy drinks? No, there were also companies at the time that were marketing just straight caffeine powder unregulated as a dietary supplement, which, whoa. I mean, I joke about having an IV of Diet Coke strapped permanently into my arm, but even my caffeine-addled brain can't get behind that one. The FDA didn't take kindly to that one either, and so they cracked down on high caffeine products in 2015 with a warning letter. That's right, not a law, just a strongly worded email. The FDA, for as much as we think of them as this almighty organization smiting food companies down with its banned hammer of government cheese, are actually people who stay out of the issues for as long as they possibly can. Instead of hitting companies over the head with rules that'll likely to a lot of litigation, a lot of backlash, and possibly a huge amount of money spent on
color combination, so I'm gonna go with
the
this
FDA
one.
often opts for more of a come-to-Jesus moment in the form of warning letters, basically telling companies that if they don't get their act together, they're all going to be in big trouble, mister. So with caffeine-related health issues on the rise and the FDA getting ready to pounce, American caffeine producers got together and decided to shape up as little as they possibly could. They recognized that in dietary supplements and energy drinks, no one understood how much caffeine they were consuming and what it could do to them. So the American Beverage Association, a group of all major U.S. beverage companies, started including high caffeine warning labels that you see on all energy.
I think I'm done for the night.
Actual FDA regulations, though, they end with just including the amount of caffeine in a beverage, nothing else. Those warning labels, they're there because of a law. They're there because PepsiCo, Snapple, Coke, Monster, Red Bull, and Rockstar have collectively agreed to play nice in order to avoid future issues and future lawsuits. Well, that might sound like a bunch of companies just doing the bare minimum and only making changes because they want to avoid big smackdown lawsuits. I'm here to say, yeah, that's basically what's happening. But it's still better than what's happening down at your local Panera. You see, while calorie disclosures are typically required at chain or quick serve restaurants like Panera, caffeine labeling is not. You can probably just tell this intuitively. When you walk into a McDonald's, you don't see the caffeine content of each soda listed above its spot on the soda fountain. This is because there's no requirement about caffeine labeling, and the jury's still out about how restaurants should disclose that kind of information. There are some cases that have been made recently, especially outside of the US, that foods in restaurants like McDonald's should be labeled if they contain caffeine. But all that would require is a small label that says, contains caffeine. No amounts, no serving sizes, no warnings. This is because more and more companies are sneaking caffeine or energy-boosting products into food. Everything from Kashi granola bars to yogurt. Because guess what? After you eat it, you feel inexplicably great.
Man, when I work at Panera, I feel great. I feel awesome. I get so much done.
And the next time you want to feel that way again, you'll buy it again. You'll eat it again. But if you don't know what's happening, you don't know that actually you're just being manipulated by micro doses of caffeine. As manufacturers are sneaking energy-boosting supplements into their regular products, like, I don't know, putting caffeine into a beverage that you would never expect to have caffeine, more and more people are consuming caffeine without being aware of what that actually means. Speaking of not knowing what it means, let's go back to that charged lemonade label. At Panera. It has the calories, which has been required to appear since 2018, and it has the caffeine, like we talked about before. What a conscientious citizen Panera is, right? No. Well, it looks like Panera is going above and beyond by including this. You can view this little hanging tag as a tiny handwritten lawsuit shield. By explicitly labeling the caffeine in these drinks, even if no one understands what it actually means, Panera can attempt to avoid a lawsuit claiming that patrons didn't know how much caffeine they were drinking. I mean, look, it's right there. It's right on the front of the thing that they're filling up their cup with. What they're not making explicitly clear is that the amount of caffeine in one serving of this lemonade, if you can even call it that, is the equivalent of 3 servings of Monster energy drink. And that's talking about the small size. The large is equivalent to 4.5 servings, which is more than 2 full cans of Monster. Every Monster energy drink comes with a warning, but the Panera lemonade just comes with a free refill sign. It's also notable that the large size here contains 390 milligrams of caffeine. That number, I suspect, is very specifically chosen. The FDA states that for adults, 400 milligrams of caffeine is the maximum
I'm done.
amount recommended to drink
My hands hurt.
day before you start having side effects. And Panera has
I'm sad I don't have enough material to work with. I'm disappointed I don't have enough horns that I ordered. I don't know what's happening. I just, like, if you don't want to make them, just, like, let me know. And I'll find someone else to print them for me. Some of these faces came out cute. But in general, I'm just kind of disappointed. Alright. Anyway, thanks guys for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one. Night.